A conversation was taking place within the Immortal Demon Pavilion. The elder was asking the guy named Sohun if he was leaving. The guy with the name Jin Sohun stood still in front of them and replied that that was right, he was leaving. One of the 4 great demons named Poison Demon said that he has been with them for about 10 years now. Does he think his Dancing Sword clan still exists? And standing next to him was his twin guy called Immortal Healer. He said that just like the Poison Demon said earlier, the Dancing Sword clan might have already disappeared, and other sects would not tolerate their existence. Sohun replied that this was probably the case. The Poison Demon was surprised by his answer and asked, then why did he still want to find those who might already be dead? Sohun replied without even thinking that they had taken him in as an orphan. And he had spent 14 years there. And he decided to repay them for their kindness, and for their offense, if any. The Poison Demon thought for a moment and asked, for offense surprise? Didn't he say that his martial art was still imperfect? And is he going to take revenge? Sohun replied that as the master said, his training in martial arts was not yet complete. However, are the disciples of a Poison Demon and an immortal witch doctor worth being afraid of? The Poison Demon said, the guy definitely knows what to answer. He asked his brother, didn't he think so? The Immortal Healer replied that this was far from news. This guy always spoke well. The Immortal Healer saw his brother's face and said that they knew this day would come. Maybe they would let him go. The Poison Demon pulled the weapons onto the table and told Sohun to take them. Sohun was surprised to see them and asked, are these the blades of the Master Moon? But unfortunately he can't accept such gifts. The Poison Demon told the boy he could have them. After all, he doesn't need them. The Immortal Healer thought for a moment and took out an object and said that apparently he had something to give him as well. And with that decision, he made Sohun take this ash fan. It would help him in his wanderings. He also told Sohun that Jianghu was a dangerous place. Even the strong could die there. Let him keep it in his mind that he should always be careful and act with certainty. Sohun listened to all the admonitions and said that he would be careful. The elders sent him on his way and said they would not bid him farewell. The Immortal Healer said that they would rather hear news about him, which, along with the Glorious One, would spread throughout Jianghu. Sohun was still contemplating his journey, but he realized that the elders were against it. Sohun looked at the gifts the elders had given him and bowing to the items said that he thanked them for everything. Sohun had reached the Western Dark Road and decided to stop at the Moon Disk Pavilion. Sohun stood in front of the doors and said that it was the school of the Dancing Sword that was here earlier. He remembered his mother asking him during those years, what would he eat? But Sohun was a very mischievous boy in his childhood and got into trouble every day. But his mother always saved him and discouraged him from such actions. Sohun thought of the family and said he hoped they were doing well. But where could everyone have gone? He entered the grounds and saw that things had changed so much around here. But when he turned around, he saw a house where the lights were on. Sohun immediately remembered that it was the Crest Inn and thought that it was the only place left. So he decided to start there. Sohun as a stranger walked straight through the door and saw that there were a lot of people drinking in the place. Sohun looked around and realized to himself that everything was exactly the same inside. But could the same owner be here? But anything was possible. Walking next to the tables, Seo noticed that the people around him didn't take their eyes off him, but the guy didn't say anything and quietly passed. Sohun sat down in front of the counter and looked around. But people were staring at him as if they wanted to eat him. Sohun tossed his hat on the table and realized to himself that the atmosphere was still the same. But then a waiter came up to him and greeted him, asking him what he wanted. And then Sohun looked at him and recognized that this guy's name was Dogon. But he was even sure of it. And then Dogon looked at him intently and said nothing. Sohun saw and knew that from the look on his face he did not recognize him. Sohun made no contact with him and replied that he wanted one chicken noodle soup. Dogon replied that he would be right there and saw that judging by his clothes he was not a local. Dogon walked away from him and assumed there would be a fight soon. And he hoped it would happen outside. The people sitting at the next table told Sohun that not only his clothes but also his sword scabbard is black. Does he know what that means? After all, the color black means defiance. Immediately he looked at the guy with great hatred. Sohun said he didn't mean anything of the sort, and he only has one set of clothes, so let them ignore him. And then one of the thugs called him an arrogant bastard and told him to make eye contact. The leader of this gang raised his hand and told his man to cool it. Sohun realized that something was going to happen to him today. The ringleader asked the guy, did he know the meaning of the color black and yet he came like this? What did he want here? Sohun replied that he didn't have any special purpose. He came back here after many years because this is his hometown. The ringleader asked surprised, hometown? But he didn't recall seeing his face before. Where had he lived? Sohun replied that his house was directly across the street from this inn. The head said that if it's directly across the street, then does that mean the guy is referring to the Moon Disc Pavilion? The head asked if he was a bartender. You wouldn't know it from him. One of the men told Sohun that he was a degenerate and dared to show off. Sohun replied that it might be a brothel there now. But previously there was a school of the dancing sword of the Crescent Moon. The head asked, the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School? And then he remembered and said the guy was talking about the Crescent Moon Dancer School. Sohun realized that he had insulted his school and replied that it wasn't the dancers, it was the dancing sword. The head said it didn't matter, he didn't care. In any case he hadn't heard of them lately. One of the guys said he thought about them from time to time. Sohun asked the others, do they know about the school of the dancing sword? The old man replied that it wasn't that he knew, he started to miss them as soon as the conversation started. Sohun said that he had bought him a drink. The old man asked if he was going to buy him a drink. Sohun replied that he was right. Sohun pushed back his chair and told the old man to sit down at the table. He immediately ordered the host to bring a bottle of good wine. The guys were telling their head that they didn't have to do it, because they could just. And then the head interrupted him and said it was okay. The head grabbed his sword and said that this guy was going to give him a treat. In the world of warriors, it was not customary to refuse such a thing. Taking a seat at the table, the head immediately placed his weapon close to her, and handled her as gently as if she were a child. The head looked at Sohun and saw that the sight of the weapon did not frighten him. He's been doing well from the start. It's strange. The old man thought that this guy was probably being ratted out by someone serious. And now he'd have to be more careful. The old man asked the guy where he came from. He seemed to be a student of some outstanding school. Sohun replied that he doesn't have a school. And he is not affiliated with any particular place. The old man was surprised at the fact that this guy had no school or patrons. So he was just a simple wanderer. Immediately he rejoiced and thought it was good news. The old man immediately shouted to Dogon and asked, where the hell is he? Tell him to bring them a drink immediately. Dogon immediately replied in his own voice that he was on his way. Sohun immediately realized that meant it was indeed Dogon. Sohun made good on pouring the old man's drink and said that he would consider it payment for his stories. The old man was surprised and asked the boy what he wanted to hear. Sohun replied that he wished to learn about the school of the dancing sword. And at that time raised his glass to drink. The old man looked down at his drink and asked, meaning about school? And what did he care about her? Sohun asked, weren't they quite famous on the Western Dark Road? He's curious to know where and how they disappeared to. Just curiosity. The old man said that from what Sohun knows, he must really be from there. The school of the dancing sword of the Crescent Moon. He hadn't heard that name in a long time. Does he know anything about the Blood Whirlwind clan? Sohun replied that he had heard. He understood that this clan was one of the crime-ridden sects that were ridden in the area. 10 years ago, they attacked the school of the dancing sword. He knows the women there were beautiful. Power was now in the hands of the clan, but that wasn't the case before. Dancing Sword tried to avoid direct confrontations. However, the Bloody Whirlwind came up with a reason to attack them. They poisoned their own subordinate and blamed it on the Dancing Sword School, and so the battle began. And the Crescent Moon Sword School was eventually defeated. Sohun asked, what about the students, did they all die? The old man said no. The clan leader took the women he had his eye on. No one knows if they are alive now, though. Sohun immediately became angry at this Blood Whirlwind clan. The old man saw that something had changed in him. It seemed like it was time for him to go. The old man pushed back his chair and said that he had finished his drink and now he had to go. Sohun told him to stop. Sohun asked the old man, "Is he from the Blood Fountain clan?" And then everyone just opened their mouths in surprise. Did the old man think the bastard had something to do with that incident? The old man asked him what he meant. Neither he nor his brothers are in any organization. When the brothers heard this, they asked the man in charge, "What is he carrying?" The old man turned to Jaegwon and told him to shut his mouth. Jaegwon asked, how could he stand by when that bastard provoked them? The old man asked with surprise, "What?" Jaegwon said that he knew something about the Dancing Sword School. Does he know the girl whose name was Duyang? The old man heard these words and got angry and told him to shut his mouth, calling him a jerk. Jaegwon said that she had gone somewhere else on business that day, so she was not involved in the battle. Because of this, he and his brothers were able to take Dukyan to a more secluded place. The old man got very angry even, threw the table aside and asked, "Can't he hear him? Why can't he just shut up?" The third guy asked his older brother, "What's wrong with him?" Jaegwon asked his brother too, was he scared of that bastard? The old man told them to just slam their volleys shut and called them idiots. And he'll talk to them later. Sohun told the guys that Dayang was as beautiful as the light of the sun. And none of them expected this guy to know her. Jaegwon asked the guy, did he know her? Like he said, she was pretty cute. Though the other girls Pahan had taken were much prettier. Sohun poured himself alcohol slowly, and the old man could hear every drop of alcohol as it fell into the glass. He realized that things were bad. The old man decided to change the conversation and told the guy not to hear them, they were drunk. Jaegwon asked his brother, what is he all about? They haven't had a drop to drink today. Sohun realized that they were all to blame for this, and immediately losing his temper sent several wands at their heads. The old man didn't realize how it all happened, that he hadn't even noticed. When he turned around he saw that they had chopsticks on their faces. The old man couldn't say a word as he abruptly felt something sticking out of his chest. When he looked, he saw that a sword had been thrust into his chest. And in a moment, Sohun remembered the Venom Demon asking him that he really thought that the school of the dancing sword he trained in still existed. Sohun, remembering those words, immediately pounded his fist on the table with anger and said what those damn bastards of the Dark Path had done. Dogon was surprised when he saw it. Jiggle and his gang hadn't even blinked an eye. And he thought the boy was finished. Sohun immediately turned to Dogon. The boy was even frightened when he heard his voice and asked, what's wrong? Sohun looked at him for a long time and asked that Dogon still didn't recognize him. Dogon replied that he was apologizing and pondered, did he know him? Dogon regarded him with a bite of his body and thought the guy's face seemed familiar to him. Dogon froze in a moment and remembered, imagining this guy when he was small. After all, they were very familiar with each other. Dogon immediately called out his name and asked if he was Zasonia himself. Sohun smiled and replied that it was correct. He doesn't sleep as much now, which is probably why he didn't recognize him. Dogon said with surprise that the guy had changed. But where had he been all these years? Because Sohun disappeared so suddenly, they thought he'd given up. But why did Sohun leave without saying a word? And how was he doing it all? Sohun had been silent all this time and could not interrupt him. Sohun realized in his head that he had been through hell. His teachers had stolen him, and they were interested in his immunity to poisons. And so they did experiments on him, lots of experiments in general. Sohun did not dare to say that and replied that it could be better. Dogon rejoiced and said that he was glad Sohun was alive anyway. The school of the dancing sword had been looking for him since he went missing. Sohun was surprised and asked that they were looking for him. Dogon was surprised at such a question and replied that everything was right. Everything had been turned upside down, and they never gave up hope. The search continued until the school was destroyed. Sohun was immediately saddened by his words. Dogon saw his face and apologized, saying he didn't mean to tell him that. Sohun asked Dogon that these guys were telling the truth. The story about the destruction of the school. Dogon lowered his head and replied that it was all true. It was the plain truth of what they had said. Sohun sighed a little more and took out the payment for the food and said that it was time for him to move on. Dogon was surprised to see the money and asked him why he was paying so much. Sohun replied that it was for the mess. Dogon told the lad not to worry about it. After all, it happens a lot here, he should remember that himself. Sohun thanked Dogon and said that they would see each other again. Dogon asked him if he was leaving already. After all, it was getting late outside. Where is he going to spend the night? Sohun replied that his lodging would be in the Moon Disk Pavilion. Dogon was startled and asked, "Is he crazy? The Blood Whirlwind clan runs this place." Sohun replied that then he should all the more go there. They would pay for what they had done to his domo. Dogon burst out in consternation and said that the lad couldn't do it alone. The clan is untouchable on the Western Dark Road. Sohun turned to Dogon and asked if he remembered his sword dance that he had practiced so often. Dogon thought for a moment and replied that of course he remembered. Despite his young age he hadn't missed a day of training. But why was he asking that? Sohun replied that he would show him the dance once he had sorted out the clan. And thanked him for his worries. And he hoped they would meet again. Dogon agreed with a smile and told him to stop by any time. And he knew where he could find the man in charge. Sohun went straight from the cafeteria to the Moon Disk Pavilion. At this moment, there were 2 guards standing in front of the pavilion to keep outsiders out. Sohun, like an elegant and well-mannered man, approached the gate. The guard greeted him and asked if he was looking for someone in particular. Sohun replied that he had heard that Choval, Yakrin and Wonhyu were quite decent. The guard apologized and said that none of the ladies had those names. Sohun thought that judging by the fact that they didn't know their names, they didn't know them. He told the guys that he would just take the other girls if they weren't here. The guard asked the guy to go inside first. After all, the show promises to be interesting. Sohun was surprised and asked, "Performance?" The guard replied that it was correct. And at that time live music was playing in the pavilion. The guard showed him around and told him that the pavilion was extremely famous for its Moon Disk dance group. Sohun heard him and thought, what was the Moon Disk dance group? Just then, the 2 girls in the center of the room got into a sword fight. They fought as if they were enemies and were ready to kill each other. In this battle, they performed dance moves. Sohun watched this monster and saw that they were trying to replicate the moves of the dancing sword school. With their lousy powers, the guard came up to Sohun and said that this man is the owner of this establishment. Tell him to stop looking at him like that. Sohun was surprised at this and asked, was this guy in charge here? It was the owner of the Moon Disk Pavilion. The guard replied that it was like that and asked him not to stare at him so openly. Sonak did not obey him and immediately raised his gaze to the head. Sohun thought about it and decided he should talk to him in the open. The guard turned to him and kept telling him that he shouldn't go there. Sohun approached the stairs that would have taken him up to the head of the pavilion. But a guard ahead stopped him and told him he could not come up here. Sohun told them that he had come to see Mr. Owner. The guards asked him, is it an appointment? Sohun replied that he did not. The guards were surprised and asked the guy that he thought that anyone could meet him at will. Just then, the captain of the Moonlight Twilight Wing Ghost Sword Squad, Chu Sahek, came up to them and asked, what's the matter? The guard bowed and replied that it was the man who wanted to see the owner of the pavilion, but he had no appointment. Chu looked menacingly at the guy and asked what he wished to see the owner. Sohun stared at him intently and said nothing. Chu made up his mind and told Sohun that he must be drunk, let him set foot home alive and unharmed. However, if he wishes to further inconvenience Mr. Owner, he will never return home again. Sohun was curious and asked why he couldn't see the owner of the pavilion. Chu didn't like it and asked the guy, didn't he understand? But then the head of the pavilion came to them and told both of them to stop. And there's no need to make a fuss. Let the boy come to him, since that's what he's here for, and ordered Chu to send the boy to his room. Chu was immediately surprised and replied that the order would be obeyed. Sohun passed through the guard line and entered the leader's room, where the table was already set and the leader was waiting for him with the girls. Chu told the ringleader that he had brought him. Sohun did not wait for an invitation and immediately sat down in the first chair he could find. The ringleader saw this disrespect and thought, why the hell is he so arrogant? He agreed to meet him because he seemed different. He thought there was someone powerful behind this arrogant guy, or was he from a famous clan? The head said he didn't know why the guy was looking for a meeting with him, but they'd better have a drink first so they could understand each other even better. The girl standing next to the head immediately took the jug and poured them a drink. The head took the bowl and held out his hand, telling him to take it. They began to drink, but the head couldn't take his eyes off him, and followed him every second. The head has thought him a fool and cannot believe that he drinks the wine that has been poured for him without suspicion. Is this guy just a kid who doesn't know how the world works? Sohun drank his wine and banged his mug on the table. Sohun thought that it looked like he had worried for nothing. And in a moment, he realized that those bastards had poisoned the wine. His body began to tell him that it wasn't that simple. The head smiled a sly grin and asked Sohun if he liked the wine that was poured. Sohun exhaled slowly and replied that it didn't taste bad, and he would drink some more. The head was surprised and asked the guy, does he know anything about wine? Let him take the wine and drink some more. And thought he was really an idiot. The head decided to cut to the chase and asked the guy why he needed him. Why had he come here in the first place? Sohun asked the head why and he replied that it was because he had business with him. The head thought that the boy should keep on riding, for they would soon see how long he would last. Sohun interrupted the head and said that they should deal with something first. He asked the head how dare he poison the wine. The head was surprised at such a question and wondered how he understood it. The poison was colorless and odorless. In any case, it was too late for him, for he would die soon. The head started laughing loudly and asked how did the guy know that? Sohun replied that how could he not know if he tried it. The head got angry and said that guy was an arrogant bastard, and they're about to watch him fuck himself up in heaven. The head realized that things were not going to go smoothly here and ordered the girls to leave them alone. The head said that he hoped the guy realized that it was turbulent, he had to be reassured. But there's no reason for him to worry. He'll give him the antidote if the kid behaves himself. Sohun was amused and told the head that he didn't need his fucking antidote. The head was surprised and asked, don't need it? He lost his temper and told the guy to stop screwing around. That kind of behavior wouldn't help him survive. Sohun replied that he wasn't messing around. Does the head think it's his turn to make a move? The head was surprised at that moment, for Sohun would not have joked with them like that. And in a minute all the guards were already lying on the floor. The head was surprised at this situation and asked the guy, what is this? Chu behind the room asked the chapter what happened there. Immediately, Chu grabbed his throat, as his breathing became confused and it became very difficult for him to breathe. The head immediately heard that something was wrong with Chu. He asked, what's going on? Chu answered the chapter through the pain that it was poison. The head asked in surprise, poison? What kind of nonsense is that? They were the ones who poisoned him. In a moment the head also felt something was wrong with him, and falling to his knees he began spitting liquid. Sohun immediately pulled out his fan and said that he was the one who poisoned them all. The head asked the boy what he had just said. Sohun smiled at them and said that he should have backed up. After all, they had done a very mean thing to him. The chapter at this point was just thinking, when did this guy have time to poison them? Sohun closed his fan and slowly approached the head. The head saw this and got scared and yelled at the guy to stop. Why would he do that? He hadn't done anything bad to him, why would he do that to him? Sohun asked the head if he was the one who tried to poison a few minutes ago. The head couldn't answer anything and just pounded his fist in anger. Sohun came up to him and looked him in the eye and said that anyone who dared to poison him would have to pay for it. Or is he wrong? The head was slowly dying and asked the guy, did he even realize what would happen to him if he killed him? The clan won't leave it like that. Sohun asked him what he was saying about the Blood Vortex clan. The head replied that it was correct. He belongs to that clan, and so does this pavilion. It would be a good decision for the guy to step aside and they would forget about this misunderstanding. What would he say to such a suggestion? Sohun thought and answered nothing. The head assumed that the guy came from other lands and didn't know the local order. and he was sure that the mention of the clan had frightened him. Sohun said, "The School of the Dancing Sword of the Crescent Moon." And asked the head that he hadn't heard that name in a long time, hadn't he? The head at this moment wondered why the guy suddenly remembered her. Sohun said that this school was previously located here, and long before the Moon Disk Pavilion appeared. Chu regained his senses a bit and grabbed his sword, realizing that this was his chance. Chu used all his speed to launch an attack while this guy isn't looking at him. But Sohun sensed everything, and as the air changed in the moment, Sohun turned around out of the corner of his eye and immediately grabbed his weapon. Chu saw this and immediately slowed down his attack. Chu thought and wondered, what was that? The guy hadn't even pulled out his blades, after all. He thought he was out of his sight. And now Chu realized that this guy seemed to be a martial artist, and he was definitely no match for him in battle. He realized that one wrong move and he would be finished. Sohun slowly turned around and said that it wasn't bad. But if he tried again and it ended differently for him. Chu heard the words about not bad, thought, how much power is hidden in him that he speaks to him so confidently. At this moment, the head took out his knife and thought that Cha has done a good job. And thanks to him, he sees an opportunity to launch an attack. The head of the last of his strength straight up and shouted that the guy was finished, sending his knife into his back. But the head proved to be very slow. Sohun had foreseen all this and immediately pulled out his blade to cut it into pieces. The head felt the rush of blood immediately, and how his eyes slowly dimmed. At last he asked how such a thing was possible. At that very moment, it was over, and the board of the pavilion chapter closed for good. Chu was also surprised and didn't understand how this was even possible and what kind of creature was in front of him. Sohun asked, "His name is Chu Sahek, right?" Sohun told him to attack if he wanted the same fate for himself. Chu dared to lower his head to reply that he would not do so. Sohun said that Chu was doing the right thing and went straight and sat on the throne of the pavilion head. Chu thought they should have guessed they were not level with him as soon as they realized the poison didn't work. Then there's that brash way of talking and rude tone. This guy looks more like a villain than a follower of the orthodox path. Sohun told Chu that the pavilion belongs to him from now on. He hopes Chu will help him take over the place peacefully. Chu asks the guy, is he going to spare him? Sohun thought for a moment and replied that it was up to him. Chu asked directly what he needed. Sohun replied that he could say that he demanded total obedience. Chu heard these words and swallowed his saliva. Chu didn't hesitate long and replied that he would obey. Sohun said that he still remembered Chu's sneak attack on him. Sohun took out a pill and immediately threw it into Chu's hands. And told him to eat it. Chu looked at the balloon and asked. Sohun replied that of course it was poison. He must be sure of his loyalty. Without thinking, Chu tossed the pill into his mouth. Chu realized that if he didn't eat him, he'd be left with nothing. He tried to eat him completely, but he had a hard time doing so. Sohun said that the Blood Whirlwind clan had no way to recreate an antidote to this poison, so he hoped for Chu's cooperation. Chu ate the pill and replied that he understood the new chapter. Sohun immediately remembered and told the guy to hand him the keys. Chu was surprised to hear about the keys. Sohun said he'd heard that they held auctions here. And the items had to be stored somewhere, right? Warehouse, storage, utility room, cellar, the place where the previous owner kept his bling. Chu replied that he understood, but Chu didn't leave the thought that this guy had taken over the pavilion for money. He obeyed him directly and put the keys on the table and told Sohun to take them. Sohun took the keys and said that he would go look around, and in the meantime, let Chu clean the place up a bit. Chu apologized and asked the guy how to address him now. Sohun replied that he was the head of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. But it might be short to call him Lord or Head. Chu obeyed him and asked the guards what they were laying around for. Tell them to put their feet up and get out. And from that moment on, their new owner walked beside them. Sohun reached the room and thought, what are all these items for the auction? All this trash? It looked more like a flea market. And then Sohun Ha-corner stopped and saw that there was a 100-year-old tuberous cabbage on the shelf. He said it wasn't the best item, but it was useful to a certain extent. Certainly better than nothing, for there would be something to eat. The next day Sohun woke up before everyone else and immediately started meditating. Then someone outside the door asked him if he was awake. Sohun replied that he could go in. It was Chu. He stood in front of the head and couldn't say a word so as not to distract. Sohun asked Chu how long it would take for the clan to know what had happened here. Chu replied that it was about 2 or 3 days. Sohun ordered Chu to get everyone together and tell them that anyone who wants to leave can be free to go. After all, no one is holding them. Chu was very surprised at this moment and asked, "What?" He thought that the new head first took over the pavilion and now he was disbanding everyone? If he did that, it would be very bad. Sohun said to pay everyone who leaves a stipend of 10 times their salary. Chu said to pay such amounts would require taking the clan's money. Sohun asked in surprise, "Clan money?" Chu replied that was correct. The clan keeps money in different places, and the pavilion is one of them. Sohun replied that that was even better. If it was the clan's money, they should use it all the more. They'll pay the people 20 times as much. At this time inside the pavilion, all the people were gathering their belongings, for they had been given the choice to stay or leave. Sohun watched everything and saw most of the workers leave. But he didn't care, because he had given them a choice. Sohun asked Chu, "Is everything ready?" Chu replied, "Yes." As the head asked, he told his boys to escort them to safety. Chu also said that there would clearly be a rat among these people who would report everything to the bloody vortex. Sohun didn't even bother and replied that he probably would. Chu realized from his words that he was expecting it. Chu remembered the head saying that he was from the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School. And that school was previously located here. Chu asked Sohun, "Does everything he does have something to do with the School of the Dancing Sword?" Sohun looked at him and asked, "What makes him think that?" Chu replied that he simply recalled his conversation with the late owner of the pavilion. Sohun said that Chu is right, he grew up in this school. Chu said that turns out to be the reason why he is. And then Sohun interrupted him and said, "Yes, Blood Vortex forcefully took this place away from Dancing Sword. After that, he set up a brothel here." Now Chu realized what the reason was. He wants revenge on the clan for what happened to his school. Chu asked, "Does the head have any allies?" Sohun replied that no, he is completely alone. Chu hearing such a response was surprised and thought that the head alone wanted to fight an entire clan. He certainly realizes that the head has handled him and the former owner of the establishment. But to fight an entire organization? He's just crazy. Chu turned to the head and said that he didn't think he could do it alone. Sohun replied that he couldn't believe they had taken over the Western Dark Road while he was gone. It probably turns out that they have a lot of resources. Chu saw that the leader was underestimating the Blood Whirlwind clan too much. Chu told Sohun that there was something he needed to know about the Blood Vortex clan. They run 4 brothels, 3 fighting halls. They also have 2 trade associations and 2 security organizations at their disposal. The Blood Whirlwind clan can mobilize at least several hundred fighters. Sohun says he doesn't need to fight all of them. He wants to take down the leader and their organization will collapse like a house of cards. That's how he took over the pavilion. Chu was surprised to hear that the head wanted to deal with the leaders. The way he imagines it. It seems that only death awaits him next to him, and now he has to get the antidote at all costs and try to escape. But will he be able to do it? And then Sohun turned to Chu, which even made him frightened. He told him that as soon as his men returned, he should leave with them. Chu was surprised and asked the head, "Is he serious?" Sohun replied that he had heard correctly. And let them take with them all the money that was kept here. Chu blushed at that moment and remembered how the head had given him the poison. And it turns out that the head had forgotten about the antidote. Sohun asked him what was wrong. Does he not wish to be released? Chu asked the head, does he remember the antidote? Sohun immediately said what he remembered and forgot to say. If he didn't take the antidote soon, he would turn into a rag doll. Chu was angry and couldn't understand how the head could forget that he had poisoned him with that stuff. If he's a benefactor, sending him to certain death. And seen in the head of a sick bastard. Sohun immediately took out a box and held it out to Chu. He saw it all and realized that it was the antidote and he would finally be healed. Chu immediately took it and ate it without saying anything. He was already happy that he was going to live. Sohun was just staring at him intently at this point. Chu wondered why he was staring at him like that. He asked the head, was something wrong? Sohun asked him, did he even know what he just ate? Chu was surprised at such a question and asked, wasn't it an antidote? Sohun replied that he didn't say that. Chu asked what was it. Sohun made no secret of it and replied that it was poison. Chu got angry and asked the head why he gave him poison again. Sohun replied that he just wanted to show him what real poison looked like. Sohun looked at him after a couple minutes and said that Chu had a strange look. He looked like he had aged 40 years. Chu realized at that moment that he thought he was dying and the head had slipped him a pacifier. But now he had eaten the real poison. Sohun didn't panic and went to the table to get a drink. Chu didn't like it because he saw that the head had just gone out for a drink. Chu accepted it and sat down at the table and said that he was asking the head to pour him one too, and immediately held out a glass. Chu saw that the head was idle and asked, now would he kill him for simply asking for a drink? Since he would die from the poison anyway, he wishes to have one last drink. Sohun saw his reaction and pouring it told him to drink then. Chu immediately sent the vodka into his mouth in a gulp. Chu, after drinking, said he's staying, too. After all, now he has nothing to lose. Sohun was surprised and asked. Chu replied that he would rather die from the blade than from the poison. First they'd sew him up, and then they'd follow him. He's dead either way. At least he'll get to see him fight. Chu held out the glass once more and told the head that he was asking him to pour more. Sohun was just laughing at this point. Chu saw his face and said, what's wrong? Why is he laughing? Sohun poured him a drink and said nothing. They should just drink. At this time, the Blood Whirlwind clan received the news. The clan head listened and told him to say it again. The head asked that some asshole took over an entire pavilion by himself. The guy replied to the gentleman that that was correct. The head said that apparently they put a talentless idiot on this point. That kid, is he one of the masters? The boy replied that it was reported that he had used poison. The head of the clan said that it was clear with these ones then. And then one of the warriors turned to the head and asked that he let him lead his Wind Blade squad and deal with him. It was the captain of the Wind Blade squad, young Gildo. The head asked him if he thought he could do it. Jung replied that he and his squad would definitely kill that asshole. The head replied that he agreed and told Jung not to let him down. If there was anyone behind them, have them remember to give them his regards. Jung bowed and replied to the chapter what would be done. He realized in his head that he had had his eye on this brothel for a long time. If everything went smoothly he would get it. During this time, Sohun and Chu would stroll through the establishments and spend time together in anticipation of new enemies. Sohun had been licking the candy the whole time. After finishing it he held out his hand to Chu and told him to give him more. Chu was tired of hearing this and sighed. Chu saw that he had been serene to the point of nausea these past few days. Any minute now, the clan might attack. How could he be so calm? Immediately, Sohun told Chu to hide quickly. Chu turned around and saw that the people from the clan had come. Chu told Sohun that they were representatives of the Blood Vortex clan. Sohun asked him if they were. Chu replied that was correct, they are a squad of wind blades, they are members of a clan. They are considered violent even by the standards of the Blood Vortex. Even their captain is here. They sent the elite against him. Sohun asked in surprise, the elite? Chu replied that from the looks of it, they were heading to the pavilion. Sohun smiled and said that in such a case, as the owner of this place, he should show hospitality, and ordered Chu that they needed to hurry. On the way, Sohun remembered and asked, are there any more Bingtangs left? Chu was surprised and asked, what? Jung immediately reached the pavilion and rushed in, and walked in with the entire army. He looked around and saw that no one was there. Jung ordered his men to smoke him out. But let them not let their guard down, let them remember, he's the one who killed the pavilion owner. His men immediately went straight to the rooms to find the enemy who had stolen the pavilion from them. Jung began to look around and saw that this place was turning out to be even better than he had imagined. If he takes over this place, he can make a lot of money off of it. And then the guy tells the captain there's no one here. And then Jung was surprised and asked his men, "No one is there?" The boy replied that was right. They searched everything, but found nothing. Maybe he had run away. Jung replied that he was probably scared of them. In such a hurry, he didn't even have time to take the money and items. Is that what they think? Jung didn't care anymore. He wished he had killed it with his own hands, but he was more interested in the moon disk pavilion. At that time Sohun himself came and without saying anything was heading in their direction. Jung and the boys saw him and were surprised. The guys started asking what kind of nonsense came to them. Tell him to get out of here immediately, because they're not open yet. And he's very lucky they're in a good mood today, or he wouldn't have gotten out of here in one piece. And then Sohun said that there were fewer of them than he thought. The boys were surprised and asked him what he was yelling about. He didn't hear what he said. Let him get out of here immediately. Jung thought and hoped that they just wouldn't say it was him. Sohun ordered Chu to shut the doors. Chu was not surprised and replied to the gentleman that it would be done now, and immediately went to close them quickly. Jung asked Sohun, "It was him, wasn't it? The man who had brazenly wreaked havoc in the pavilion. And they thought he had already escaped." Sohun asked, "Why would he run away? This place is his home after all." Jung said he's an idiot and this place will be his grave. It would be better if he ran away. He immediately ordered his men to capture him. Quite a few punches were thrown, but Sohun stood his ground and swung everyone left and right with his slaps. From such a blow the lad was seriously injured. He saw his arm was so surprised, for it was broken. Sohun didn't even get tired, he slowly fought them and beat them to a pulp. After all, he needed their captain. Everyone was surprised at his strength, for he hadn't even received a single scratch from the enemy's attacks. The guys told Sohun he was a bastard and decided they would attack him from all directions. Sohun felt himself being pounced upon. With his foot firmly planted on the ground he turned around and attacked with a crushing attack. The warriors didn't realize what they were up against today, as they were a passing yard for him. Chu looked at all this and saw that he had scattered them like children. But just how much strength he had in him. And he didn't even use his blade. Jung realized and thought that the pavilion was already in his hands. Where did this jerk really come from? Sohun shouted at Jung and called him a greaseball. He asked him directly what he was worth. Jung called him an arrogant bastard upon hearing those words. He asked Sohun where he would be from. This guy looks strong. What does he want with this pavilion? Sohun replied that it was the Blood Whirlwind clan. Jung didn't understand and asked him angrily, "What?" Sohun repeated that he would own the entire Blood Vortex clan. Jung thought that this guy had a grudge against them. He said that in that case, he should discuss the matter with their leader. And he could arrange it. He will return to the clan and personally inform him of his intentions. What will the guy say to that? Sohun smiled and asked what he thought he looked like a fool. Jung realized that he would have to fight him. Jung raised his sword on his back and said that apparently they would not agree. Sohun backed up and said that there was nothing to negotiate with them. Jung was surprised that the guy didn't even flinch. He picked up speed and said he had asked for it. Sohun took his enemy's body and raised it in front of him so that this fat man would duck on top of him and repel the blow. Song hoped that as soon as the guy opened up to dodge, he'd be in time and strike. Sohun pulled all the power out of this guy with his own strength, and sent him at Jung with all his speed. Jung couldn't resist such an attack, and crashed into the wall with such force that he was very injured. Jung called him a bastard and looked around and saw that the guy had disappeared. But when he turned around, he saw that Sohun was already in front of him. Sohun didn't bother chatting with him, and immediately punched with a kick of his foot that Song couldn't even stop and took on his face. Song was so cruel to them that he didn't want any of them to live. Everyone looked at him and wondered how he could fight like that. The attackers said this guy just took out the captain. Unbelievable. What's wrong with him? Sohun looked at them with his menacing gaze that the others pissed their pants in fright and trembled. Sohun ordered Chu to have him open the doors. Chu immediately obeyed and replied that it would be done now. Swinging the doors open, Sohun told the survivors to disappear and remember to pick up their buddies. Everyone was surprised that he wished to let them live. Sohun remembered and told them to tell the head of the Blood Whirlwind clan that if he wished to oppose him, let him come in person. The attackers realized there was nothing they could do to him in this battle and said what would be done. Sohun decided to take a break after the battle. He went to the drink table and poured himself some wine. Chu went up to him and turning to the gentleman told him to pour him some too. Sohun asked him, what was his honor? Chu asked surprised, by what? And replied that he closed the doors and then opened them again. Sohun thought for a moment and said fair enough. Chu saw Sohun pouring him wine and asked why he spared some. Sohun replied that it was done to provoke their leader. And I am sure the sight of his subordinates would not leave him indifferent. Chu said that he understood and immediately raised his glass of wine. In his head, he thought that the head had purposely picked a fight with the Blood Whirlwind clan. Sohun said that when everyone comes here, it will be dangerous for Chu to be here. Tell him to hide somewhere. Chu didn't understand why the master was so kind to him and worried about his life. At the end, he said that he would pour the master a drink himself. At this time in the Blood Whirlwind clan, the clan head was saying that they dared to appear before him without figuring out until now who was opposing them. The servant said that the surviving members of the Wind Blade squad said that he had a grudge against them all. The head took it indifferently and asked, so what? After all, every other person in this world has a grudge against them. The head ordered the servant to gather all the warriors. The servant asked surprised, all of them? The head replied, yes. They must not let him get away with it. If they show weakness now, the other clans will sense it. The head remembered and ordered everyone to tie up the survivors of the Blade Squad and bring them to the square. They would execute them before retreating. At least these useless bastards will be good for something. And they'll set an example for the rest of us. For them, too. They didn't wait for the next day and headed for the West Dark Road area. At this time, Sohun was in the pavilion practicing, and recovering all his lost strength. But then Chu burst in and shouted to the master. Sohun did not open his eyes for a few minutes, and then Chu said that they were here, and there were no more. Sohun calmly replied that it was expected. Chu said he meant that there were a lot of them. Sohun asked, and who was leading them? Chu replied that he had not looked, but it must be their leader. And then a voice was heard from the lower floor for Sohun to come out, for he wanted to see them, and here they were. Just then, Sohun picked up a garment that was lying nearby. Chu said to the Lord, this is a chogori for martial performances. Sohun replied that this was correct. And at that moment he recalled a memory from his childhood as a girl asked him what she looked like. And at that moment she was wearing this. Sohun was at this moment very surprised from her beauty and said that she looks adorable. Sohun said that when he was a kid, he was told that the costume was needed to make the curves of a sword dancer stand out. Chu said he understood and asked why he was wearing that. Sohun replied that it was because he was a student of the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School, and they should all know and realize who had taken their lives. He immediately went to the ground floor and said he would be back soon. Chu decided that he wouldn't leave him alone and said he would go with him. Sohun stopped at that moment and asked surprised, what? Chu replied that if he was killed, he would die with him. Sohun told him to wait for him here. He should not be a part of this. Sohun reached for the door to get out. Chu was scared and turned to the master saying not to die. Sohun replied that in no way would he. Sohun stepped in front of the pavilion without fear and saw that the clan representative had come with his entire army to destroy him. They stared at each other for a long time and then from the crowd asked, what's with the outfit? And why did he dress up like a woman? The attackers thought and asked, is he one of these? And they shouted to him to kneel down and mocked him. And then the head raised his hand and told his warriors to be quiet. He looked at Sohun and asked what he must be, Zasonya. Sohun hearing these words, immediately took up his sword and replied to the head of the Blood Whirlwind Pavilion that everything was correct. Sohun said that he was Zasonya of the Crescent Moon School of the Dancing Sword, who would eradicate them from this world forever. At this moment, Sohun remembered how he had practiced with a sword as a child and dropped his sword on the ground. He immediately grabbed his hand. But then the girls ran up to him and asked Zasonia, "Is he okay?" There was a bruise on Zasoni's arm, but he replied that he was fine. The girl asked him, "Did he hurt himself?" Zasoni immediately answered again, "No." The girl took his sword and told him to be careful, and let him try to do as she was about to show him. Zasonia got excited and said that he would watch carefully. Immediately the girl showed him the sword dance. A couple days later, Zasonia had been practicing the whole time, and repeating the very moves he was shown. The girls all got excited at this point and said he was doing great. "This is so much better than before. He was born for this. He has a great talent." Zasonia laughed when he heard the praise and asked, "Really?" But that wasn't all there was to it. Then Sohun remembered Togon saying that the school of the dancing sword had been looking for him since he had gone missing. They never gave up hope. The search continued until the school was destroyed. Sohun shouted to his enemies that they were all dead. He didn't talk to them much, and immediately jumped into the crowd of enemies to kill them all. The head was surprised and realized he was fast. Sohun went through the crowd of warriors and began to slaughter them all like dogs. Everyone at that moment wondered where so much blood had come from. The warriors asked what had even happened. How had he come to them so quickly, and killed several warriors so stealthily? Sohun didn't dwell on it, for he had promised that he would finish everyone off here today. The captain shouted to the warriors to stop panicking. After all, they were facing only one enemy. Have everyone attack from all directions. The warriors came to their senses and realized they had the advantage, and shouted that they would kill him. Sohun saw that they were already starting to come around and attack. He rejoiced and told them not to be shy and to attack. Sohun at this moment has turned into a monster that is ready to devour everything around him that advances on him. The warriors saw from afar how this guy's light illuminated everything around them. They realized that their opponent was very strong. The head was also surprised and remembered that he wished he had taken this boy to himself. He looked promising. But he didn't think he would come back like this. These movements of his, this was the technique of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. Would he be able to deal with such a powerful opponent, he wondered. Chu was sitting by the window at this time and watched the head fight. He was saying that this guy never ceases to amaze. He wondered what kind of martial art he was using. Either way it looks beautiful. And then the pavilion head saw that this boy was using a poison that was poisoning everyone around him. This poison went down, and every person who fell on it and breathed would immediately fall to their knees and die, because their breath was completely blocked. Moving ever deeper, behind him he left bodies that fell to their knees from his poison. Sohun passed between them like a speeding train, and without sparing any venom, he let loose in the square to kill everyone. The captain asked in amazement, how was this even possible? And then everyone shouted that their bodies weren't moving. The warriors were yelling at the captain to help them. They can't handle him, and everyone will be dead in a couple hours. The captain turned to the head and said that the battle formation was over. The head looked closely and saw that Sohun was leaving only corpses behind him. The head saw that it was incredible, and wondered how he had become such a strong martial artist. The head asked Zasonia that he had returned like the vengeful spirit of the dancing sword school, right? Sohun asked them, was that it? The warriors said he was a monster. And they asked why the captain and the clan leader do nothing? Don't they care about their lives? Sohun looked at them all and told them to get out of the way if they didn't want to die here today. After all he wants is the head of the Blood Whirlwind clan. All the warriors heard him and began to make his way to the head. The head was surprised that the warriors had betrayed him, but he realized that they were not his equals. The head turned to his dear Zasona and said that he had grown up. The head smiled and said he had gotten so big and strong. What does he want them to do? Sohun asked angrily, what else is he asking, what does he want? The head said he guesses he put on a show in retaliation for the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. But he's sure if there's something else he needs. Perhaps he'd be interested in their clan's resources? Sohun said, what is he even talking about? The head asked, what's wrong with him? If he wanted revenge, he would have started with him. Or does Sohun think he can fool him like he fooled those knuckleheads? And if Zasanaya kills him, he gets nothing, because he's the only one who knows how to run a money-making business. So let him tell me what he really wants." Sohun turned to the Lord Leader. The head asked him what was the matter. Immediately Sohun stood in front of him and looked into his eyes. He asked the head, had he finished his tirade? The head immediately saw in the guy's eyes that he was seriously only concerned with revenge. Sohun said that if he had nothing else to offer, he would die. The head immediately shouted at him to stop and asked if he didn't want to know where the students of his school were. Sohun stepped back a distance and asked, "Disciples of the dancing sword?" The head took up his sword and replied that was correct. The school of the dancing sword he grew up in. Immediately, he swung his sword at Sohun to kill him. Sohun was faster than him, for he realized that the head was lying to him, and immediately with his swords, he repelled the attack and dodged. The head realized at that moment that the guy had dodged a point-blank attack. Sohun got behind him and said that scumbags like him are the worst. Sohun immediately grabbed his blades, and with sparks of movement ran into the head to deal with him. Sohun touched the head that he stepped back and started spitting blood. He saw that with a single touch he had defiled his blood and disrupted the flow of energy in his body. Sohun saw that the head had managed to repel his attack. He told the head that he had been fooling around all this time. The head asked his warriors why they were frozen, and immediately ordered them to kill him immediately. A few determined warriors swooped down on him, but they realized they were heading for certain death. All of their attacks were repelled by Sohun. He didn't feel them and fought them on light movements. The head saw that Sohun was strong, however, he would not be able to match up in a battle with several captains at the same time. Sohun saw that these ones were already stronger, and he was already a little curious about how to deal with them. He didn't agonize, and in a moment released his poison. The head laughed at that moment and said they had an antidote. And his poison doesn't work on them. Sohun immediately jumped into the distance and said that he had thought they were so arrogant. But it turns out they're on antidotes. The head replied that's right, they heard he was using poison so they bought the most expensive ones. So now he won't be able to attack them head-on. Sohun said they were all talking and sure enough the poison had no effect on them, and immediately sent a stream of poison on them. The head replied confidently that he absolutely did. If he wished, let him see for himself. But then the head felt his eyes turn red for a moment. He sensed that something was wrong, and in a moment he fell to his knees. All the captains clutched at their throats, for they were short of air. The head through the pain asked him what is it? Could it really be poison? But how could all this happen if they have the antidote inside? Sohun replied that they would never in their lives find such an antidote that would protect them from his master's poison. Sohun said that he believed those who had taken the antidote were the top of the clan. He immediately pulled out his blades, and ruthlessly began to cut them all down. Sohun said they were all pathetic scum. The head saw that his time was coming to an end and many corpses were lying on the ground. The head was once again told with fright to stop. After all, with his abilities and his resources, they could form an indestructible tandem. And his money, Sohun will definitely need it. He promises him from the bottom of his heart. Not only the Western Dark Road, but the whole country, no, the whole world will fall at his feet. Sohun slowly approached him and said that he wouldn't shut up, and called this head a laughing stock. The head was surprised and asked, mockingly, "He is the man who held the entire Western Dark Road in his hands." The head told Sohun that he might be interested to know where those dancing sword whores were, and then he started laughing and replied that he would never find them because he had killed them all. He used them one after another, and when he got tired of them, he got rid of them. Sohun, hearing these words, lost his temper and cut him into several pieces with his blades. The head of the pavilion was shattered into small pieces by Sohun's blades. Sohun at this time gave those girls who had taught him everything and he avenged them. The warriors spoke out of surprise that their head was dead and so were all his captains. And then Sohun looked at them and shouted that the head of the clan was dead. And those who want to follow him, don't wait, but attack. Immediately the warriors tucked their tails and stood still. Chu walked out onto the balcony and saw that Sohun-san had indeed destroyed an entire clan of the Blood Whirlwind. Sohun thought about it at this moment and remembered the head saying that he had killed them all and used them. And they are all dead. The day after the defeat of the Blood Whirlwind clan head, the pavilion was scratched with a new name. Under the name of the School of the Dancing Crescent Moon, Chu went to Sohun and told him that the school sign he had ordered earlier had already been brought in and was being installed. And they spread the word that they were looking for people who knew something about the survivors of the Dancing Sword School. And those who have met them. Sohun was having a drink with Hera at this time and told Chu that it was very good. He realized that even though, according to him, everyone was dead, he's sure of the opposite. Those who weren't caught then are now living somewhere else. Chu said that all the people of the Western Dark Road were grateful for the massacre of the Bloody Whirlwind clan, and they idolize him for all this. Sohun was surprised at such news and asked, "Really?" Chu confidently replied that it was like that. It was because the Bloody Whirlwind was atrocious in these parts. Sohun was surprised and glared at Chu. Chu asked him what was wrong. Sohun replied that the clan was cruel, but Chu was also a part of it. It was then that Chu realized that he had fallen into a trap. Sohun turned to him and told him to make sure he started a new life. Chu immediately understood his spoken words and replied that he would fulfill everything. Sohun had not abandoned the thought that the men were glad to be freed, but should it be considered that revenge had been accomplished? Chu said that still, the successors of the Western Golden Convoy asked for a meeting with the head of this school. Sohun interjected, "Western Gold Convoy?" Chu replied that was correct. That's one of the organizations that Blood Vortex was roofing. They were in hiding, however, when they found out what had happened, they wanted to find him and thank him. Sohun accepted everything and asked how many enemies did the clan head have. Chu replied that there was a small problem though. Bloodwind stole from the Western Gold Convoy to conduct business in favor of the Wind Convoy organization. Sohun told Chu to go and find out what had been stolen, and let him make sure it was all returned to the Golden Convoy. Chu bowed and said that everything would be done. He thought that Sohun would probably give away all the possessions again this time. Although it would be nice if he decided to be a little greedy. Just then, a guard came into the room and said that the innkeeper Crest would like to see the clan leader. Chu was surprised and asked what he wanted. Sohun told Chu to let his childhood friend in, and then Dogon came in with some food. Sohun said that he had brought so much food. Dogon replied that he had remembered that he liked dumplings. Sohun poured them a drink and said there is such a thing in this life. He had forgotten such things, and how was Uncle Poon doing? Dogon replied that he has a bad back, that's why he mostly lies in bed. Sohun asked in surprise, "Is he that bad?" Dogon was surprised and replied no. He's just faking it because he doesn't want to work. Sohun smiled and said he was still the same. Sohun turned to Dogon and told him to join him and help him with the kitchen. And Uncle Poon can be pulled in just the same. Dogon was surprised and asked what to do about the inn. Sohun replied that there were more people in such a moon unit now and they needed somewhere to eat. This place had as good a kitchen as his inn and he would be able to supervise the whole process. Dogon looked at the boy and wondered if it was true. Sohun asked him what's wrong. Is he not thrilled with the idea? Dogon replied that it wasn't that, he felt that if he cooked here, he would end up getting slaughtered. Sohun asked him what he meant. Dogon put the dumplings down in his plate and replied that he had seen everything as he fought. Sohun asked, then what was he worried about if he had seen everything? Dogon replied that he felt that it didn't end there. Even if Sohun doesn't want to fight, there are those who won't leave him alone. Let him tell him this. How strong is he? He'll listen to what Sohun has to say and decide if he wants to be a humble cook at the inn or work for them as a chef. Sohun replied, so how can he know how strong he is? It hasn't been long yet since he went out into the world. Dogon huffed and said he couldn't tell based on what clan he was from. Sohun replied that he doesn't know how powerful he is, but Jianghu knows how much more powerful his teacher is. Dogon was surprised and asked who he was. Probably someone from a respected clan. Sohun replied that they were 4 great demons. Dogon was startled and asked, 4 great demons? Sohun calmly replied that was correct. He is the lord of the unorthodox factions. It is madness, lust, witchcraft, and poison. The 4 great enemies of the orthodox factions, Dogon asked. Sohun replied, yes. Dogon was frightened at such words that his hands were getting annoyed and he decided to drink quickly. Dogon took it all normally and said he was very glad Sohun was still alive. Dogon asked Sohun to let him know that his teacher was going to come so he could get the hell out of here. Sohun replied that it wouldn't happen, he needn't worry. He is a very busy man. Dogon asked Sohun if he wished anyone else to know about it. If so, then few would dare to come to him. Sohun replied that no. At least not now, it would rather have the opposite effect. Dogon understood and said that was correct. The orthodox way would not have left him alone. There would be those who would blame his actions under the guise of nobility. It's best to tread carefully. Besides, the unorthodox path territory is full of guys like the Bloody Whirlwind clan. Now that he had overthrown them, wouldn't others want to try their luck? Sohun asked if there was anyone he should watch out for. Dogon replied that they are the wolves of the swordsmen of the North Wind in the north, and the Sun Dragon Alliance in the south are the most dangerous factions. If anyone could kill the head of the Bloody Vortex, it would be the leaders of these two organizations. And if they unite and attack the Western Road, what will happen to them? Will Sohun be able to deal with them alone? Sohun turned to Dogon and said that it was not for us to worry. On the contrary, these two clans. Dogon got excited and asked, seriously? Sohun replied that was correct. Dogon said that's great. I wish they were empty, we should drink to that. The head of the Sun Dragon Alliance, Lim Hassan, asked the scout that the guy learned martial arts and returned to his homeland to take revenge. What kind of cliché is this? Lim asked military counselor Ji if he agreed with that statement. And it's so hackneyed it makes your hair stand on end. So who killed the head of the Blood Vortex? Ji replied that they had yet to find out, but the Western Dark Road was ruled by no one after the death of the clan head. Lim heard this and said, that's how it is. What should they do with this news? Ji suggested that it would be best to send an assassin first. Despite the price, he thinks an invisible flying dagger would be perfect for the mission. Lim was surprised and said that Ji wished to send a flying dagger. Ji replied that was correct. After all, that guy single-handedly took down the Bloody Whirlwind crane. And since he's young, they should send a woman. Sohun was drinking again and sitting in his room. But then the warriors knocked on his door and said that they were paying their respects. Sohun was surprised by such a visit. Chu said that they were from the Phantom Sword clan, which was in a trade association and worked in the black market. Sohun asked, are they from the Phantom Sword clan? Chu replied that was correct. He was part of them until the Blood Whirlwind clan took them over. Chu said he would like to rebuild this clan and become their leader. Sohun told him to do as he wished. The warriors left and Sohun asked Chu if the Western Gold convoy was okay. Chu replied that it was all taken care of. Chu said as he ordered, he put all the drugs and poisons in one room, valuables and money in another. The books and documents that are left from the Blood Whirlwind clan are also located separately. Sohun said it was a good job. He will take the entire third floor from now on. Chu was surprised and asked, the whole third floor? But he realized that one room would be enough. Why did he want the whole floor? Sohun replied that this is correct and let him make sure that no one enters on it. Consequently, this applies to the rest of the third floor rooms as well. Chu asked, there should at least be someone to help with the cleanup? Sohun replied that anyone who came up would die choking on their own bloody vomit. And then Chu realized in his head that he would let the poison in. He would let everyone know about it. But then who would guard him? Sohun asked in surprise, guarding him? Chu replied, yes. Wolves and swordsmen and the Dragon clan to try to get rid of him to take possession of the Western Dark Road. Don't they need countermeasures? They might even send assassins. Sohun realized that he should be prepared for that. Sohun asked Chu, his subordinates used to do convoying before, right? Chu replied that was correct. Sohun stood up and said that in that case they should see how strong his future entourage was. Sohun went outside and told the warriors to attack him and not to hold back. He would not overdo it, so don't let them worry. The commander asked Sohun, is he sure he'll be alright? They are all professional swordsmen, after all. Sohun smiled and asked the boys what they thought they should worry about him. Immediately all the warriors blushed. Chu listened and realized that he didn't need to talk about it like that. Sohun asked the warriors who was first, and then the warrior drew his sword and told the Lord that he would be the first. Sohun did not expect this and was ready to fight. The warrior used all his strength to launch this strongest attack. But Sohun stood still and simply reflected his every blow. At the last moment, Sohun put up his sword to repel the attack. But the warrior's sword could not withstand it and broke into pieces. The warrior was at this moment very surprised and didn't understand how this happened. Sohun saw the moment and made an attack from the elbow. The warrior couldn't resist his attack, and knocked out the warrior with the hard part of his sword, which even left a mark on the warrior's head. Chu saw this and realized that the leader should have gone easy on him. You shouldn't have hit him so hard. Sohun looked at the rest of the warriors and told the next one to attack. The warriors were all frightened and no one wanted to go. Chu saw and realized that this was a common reaction, and something reminded him of it. And then Sohun turned to Chu and told him to come over and fight him. Chu was confused at this point and asked, should he too? He already knows his powers, doesn't he? Sohun said nothing, and with one look Chu knew he was serious and said he was coming. After a couple minutes of fighting, Chu was completely defeated, and beaten to a bloody pulp. But he kept on his feet the whole time. Sohun exhausted and beat them all and said goodbye, that was enough for today. And he ordered that from now on they would train every morning. Poor Chu asked, every morning? Sohun replied, yes. Even if he won't be here, they should practice like they did today. Sohun asked Chu, doesn't he want to? Chu asked the master, won't they weaken like that? Sohun replied that he would buy elixirs on the black market and distribute them to everyone. They would all be as good as cucumbers. Chu understood everything and said that he obeyed the master. Sohun said nothing and started to leave. Chu asked him where he was going. Sohun turned around and said, they say warriors of the dark path die before the age of 30. With his abilities, he will die much sooner. If he wants to live like them and die by someone else's sword before 30, he won't interfere. Let him do as he pleases. But if he wishes to live as a human, let him do as he is told. They don't know the technique of internal energy cultivation or the technique of the forbidden blade. Did he think they were trained in anything? The warrior said he would obey the master. Sohun said he would return after the walk. If there are good weapons among the things from the black market, let him give them to his subordinates. Sohun stepped out into the city and saw a very familiar man standing in front of him, walking around with his weapon. And then the stranger said hello to Sohun and said that he heard he was the head of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. Sohun replied to the stranger that this was correct. The stranger smiled and said that the wolves had sent them here. The head of the clan had heard about them, hadn't he? Sohun replied that he had only heard about them in passing. The stranger said that rumors had reached the ringleader that he had killed the head of the Blood Whirlwind clan and began to rule these lands. He sent him a letter and a gift. The stranger told his servant to give it to him. The dwarf bowed and immediately ran up to Sohun. The dwarf knelt down and handed him the scroll. The stranger said the chief of the northern wolves wanted to shake his hand. He can come to him. Or, if he is uncomfortable, the northern wolf can come to him himself. Then he ordered the dwarf to remember to give him the gift. The dwarf immediately took out an envelope and said there was 100,000 yuan. Sohun immediately saw that something was wrong. After all, the eyes of a snake were visible from the envelope and it immediately attacked him. Sohun decided that he would put up his hand. The snake clung to his hand like a hungry snake. While the warriors laughed, for they knew it was poisonous. The stranger told Sohun that he uses poison, so he knows who the blue viper is, right? He'll give him the antidote if he goes quietly. Sohun held up his hand and immediately grabbing the snake turned to the stranger to leave in fear. And when the dwarf heard those words, he came at him with his knife. Not knowing who this guy really was, Sohun saw that he was being attacked and took a step back to dodge the cut. The stranger laughed too and decided to join in. Sohun immediately drew his blades, realizing that this would not work, and began to repel their attacks. The dwarf was very clingy, and didn't want to stop. Sohun saw that he was very slow for him, and easily repelled the attacks. The stranger joined in as well, and attacked Sohun from behind while he was distracted by the dwarf. But Sohun saw everything, and defended himself. Sohun had had enough of all this, and decided to get down to business. The stranger managed to deal with the attack, and repelled it. At that moment, the dwarf attacked from the other side, and with his weapon got closer, but Sohun used his second blade and reflected. Sohun stood between them like a prisoner. He decided to deal with them not so quickly, and play around a bit. The attackers realized that they would do nothing from this position and withdrew to a distance to attack again. The stranger said, as expected of someone who killed the head of the blood vortex. It would be a shame if the poison didn't work on him. Nevertheless, his body will soon stiffen. If he kneels before he loses consciousness, it will give him the antidote. Sohun looked at him and told him to stop this nonsense. And let him say who hired them. He doesn't think it's the Northern Wolf clan. And then the dwarf called the guy a self-righteous asshole. And he still doesn't seem to realize where he's at. But at that moment, someone threw a smoke ball that dropped in front of Sohun's feet and the others were left without good visibility. The dwarf got even more angry and attacked, shouting that he was going to chop him into mincemeat. And then he was able to get closer to Sohun. But Sohun saw and felt it all, and immediately the smoke covered them completely. The stranger started laughing and asked Seol. Where was he in such a hurry? He shouldn't have been in such a hurry. The stranger looked closer and saw a shadow that looked like Seol. He asked, is that him walking there? But it didn't turn out that way. Sohun came out through the smoke, and was covered in the color of a demon still on his feet. Lo and behold, the smoke split apart and Sohun stood over the dwarf's body with his swords. Seol couldn't handle him. Sohun asked. Who sent them? And he asked for the second time. The stranger gets angry and asks him who he is. And he is sure he was bitten by a blue viper. Sohun asked, there was poison on the letter too, wasn't there? The stranger saw that the poison didn't work on him. Not only did the poison not work, but he is strong as hell. Sohun said that if no one had sent them here, then who had set them up like this? The stranger realized at that moment that there had been a setup, and he can't believe they were used as expendable. And now they were just bait in this battle. Sohun said he thought the warrior realized they had been tricked. The stranger lost his temper and attacked, telling him to shut his mouth. Sohun did not play with him, and at the appropriate moment his blade swung, and cut the stranger to pieces. The stranger in this battle was left without an arm. He already realized that he had no chance against this guy. The stranger fell to his knees and realized he couldn't move. And this guy's blades have paralyzing poison on them. Sohun approached him and said, how famous does he have to become for chumps like them to stop coming here to forfeit their lives? It's even better this way though, the more dirt he removes, the cleaner this world will be. The stranger humbled himself and replied to have the boy kill him. Sohun looked into his eyes and asked what he wished for death. Did he know that he knew witchcraft, he would have cured these wounds easily. So he asked him one last time. Who has sent him? The stranger made up his mind and answered that it was the assassin known as the Invisible Flying Dagger. Sohun got the information and killed him by saying Invisible Flying Dagger, then it turns out the assassin sent by another assassin. Sohun said that he must be watching him now. Sohun started looking around to see him. Sohun said it looked like they had a rat in the house. The killer was watching him and said that he seemed to want to spare him but ended up killing him. Killer was watching the battle through binoculars and said this guy has no brakes at all. Chu asked that he needed to find a way to lure out the leaders of the Northern Wolf Clan and the Sun Dragon Association. Sohun replied that was correct. Chu asked, what on earth happened? Why such measures? Sohun replied that someone had sent an assassin to him. Chu was surprised and asked if he was okay. Sohun replied that no, he died in the square. What does he think? Chu said that means he needs to think of a way to draw him out. He has an idea. It's a meeting of the heads of the organization. Sohun was surprised and asked, chapter meeting? Chu replied, yes. They are no longer held now, but it used to be an annual event. All the leaders of the Dark Path faction are present at this gathering, and they are accompanied by martial arts masters. Plus, based on who shows up to the meeting and who doesn't, they can figure out which faction is more of a threat. Sohun asked that Chu was suggesting that the meeting be organized again. Chu confidently replied that this was correct. Sohun said that was not a bad idea. Chu replied that in that case he would look into the matter. And then there was a knock at the door. It was Dogon. He told Sohun that he had brought some food. Sohun replied that he kept wondering when he would show up. Chu made up his mind and said he would probably go. Sohun told him to eat before he went. Chu was surprised at such a suggestion and blushed. Sohun said for Chu to keep him company. Chu thought about sitting next to the master. Sohun asked Chief Dogon, "They'll have enough food for tonight, right?" Dogon replied that absolutely. Besides, he had brought some fine wine with him. Sohun said that it was excellent. Sohun saw that Chu was hesitant to sit with them at the table. He told him to sit down with them again. They were sitting around drinking at the time, while the killer watched them and looked to attack. The killer realized that this guy had been assassinated recently, and he was drinking wine so calmly. Crazy. Plus he knows he's here. The killer said he was an idiot, and said he was gonna send him to hell tonight. The guys went out for some air and Dogon was telling Sohun to show him tomorrow. He's in the shitter, after all. Sohun replied that he was completely sober, and also he must keep his promise. Dogon remembered how he had said he would show him this dance once he had dealt with the clan. Dogon remembered what he had said then, didn't he? Sohun asked the cook if he remembered him, didn't he? Dogon answered of course. He asks if he is in his condition. Could they wait until tomorrow after all? Sohun looked at him and replied not to worry. It would just be a drunken dance of the night blade. Sohun immediately began to demonstrate this beautiful dance, which is over 100 years old. Demonstrating the elements of the dance he remembered being told to go smoothly at first, and then faster and faster. Sohun displayed it all to the elements with such dignity and enjoyment that he shone in the middle of the square. And in a moment he remembered the girl telling him to change his walk now, and he started to show it. Sohun at such moments imagined live as he danced with the girl who had taught him this, and they end up expressing respect. Sohun was very glad that he repeated those very movements again and remembered. The girl told him at the time that he was doing great. Even better than her. She's so proud of him. Sohun asked loudly, where did that leave them? Dogon was watching this at the time and froze for a few moments with his mouth open. Dogon came to his senses and told Sohun that he simply had no words. Everything is exactly as it was before. Unbelievable. Dogon suggested to Sohun that they go back to the outhouse. After all, it was already getting chilly outside. Sohun told Dogon to go. He would stay here for a while. Dogon turned around and started to walk away. Sohun did not leave and lay on the ground looking at all the stars in the sky. At such moments he remembered all his own. The assassin at this time was watching him from the roof and pondering why he was always doing some unknown wild thing. And he reeks of alcohol so badly that he can smell that insignificant and annoying odor from here. It was as if he was waiting to be killed. The killer made up his mind and said that the master in this house is the Baron himself. His throwing knives must be a lot faster than that stupid drunk. The assassin decided that this time he would have to act on his own, and released his knives in midair. Dropping to the ground, the killer saw that his knives had hit the empty space where the guy himself lay. The guy looked at Sohun and saw that he had dodged. At that time Sohun was already in the air and watching him. The guy saw him and called him a fool. He decided to hide in the air, didn't he? And at that moment, he let his weapon out. This weapon was like a snake releasing poison. As he attacked, he shouted that he was definitely finished now. The guy decided to launch a flying blade hail attack. Sohun was looking at him at this time and didn't move. Sohun used his fan given by his teacher at the last moment, and attacked with the Immortal's Wind Flash attack. This guy's needles the moment he touched Sohun all fell to the ground, for he was much stronger. The guy was very much surprised. How did this guy actually do such a miracle? Sohun stooped down and looked closely at him. The guy had a last-minute thought, what's wrong with this guy? Turns out he's pretty damn strong. The guy thought he knew at least roughly how strong Sohun was. Apparently he was wrong. Sohun closed his fans and asked, "So he's the customer?" A bloody rat sent after him. The guy didn't accept such disrespect, and because of all his speed, he swooped down on Sohun to attack. Sohun had seen it all coming, and was able to dodge her, something the guy didn't even expect to happen. The guy didn't stop there, and began to launch more attacks. Sohun one fan defended himself and didn't bother. Guy understood and saw that the difference between their internal energies was too great. Every parry he makes Sohag's body shudder. Sohag, however, is only defending himself for now. But he realized that if he stopped now, death would surely await him, which he would not be able to dodge. The guy had already started spitting blood and was saying he had to kill him, by all means. Sohun had no trouble dodging his attacks. He just used his fan to deflect all his attacks. From such a powerful energy, the wind rose very much. Sohun's cloak was rising, for he was just fighting at 50%. Sohun said that apparently that was all he could do. The boy was taken aback by such words and asked what. Sohun didn't drag this out and started attacking. He immediately turned this guy upside down with several attacks. The guy slammed into the wall and realized he was no match for him and got even angrier. While Sohun was just barking at him, the boy now felt and realized that Sohun was just playing with him. Sohun immediately opened his fan and started waving. Sohun turned to him and asked if that was all he had to show for it. The boy realized that he was incredibly strong, and running away now wouldn't work for him either. The boy made up his mind and said that if Sohun would spare him, he would help him. Sohun smiled and replied that it was too late. The guy asked him, then why didn't he kill him from the beginning? Sohun replied because he had a question for him. The guy realized in a moment that Sohun was curious about the details of the customer. He immediately dropped his sword and fell to his knees, saying that he would do whatever Sohun wanted. The boy said that if Sohun wanted him to be a dog, let him just say so. Sohun replied that he did not want a dog. The guy saw Sohun heading towards him and started shouting that the head of the Sun Dragon clan had sent him. He paid him 10,000 niang, and if he had wounded him, he would have paid another 5,000 on top. And finally, another 10,000 if he killed him. Sohun looked at him and said he understood, the head of the Sun Dragon clan. The boy asked, was he going to spare him? Sohun shoved his sword at him with his foot and told the lad that this was his reward for such a quick response. He would reward him with a painless death. Sohun only looked at his eyes and told him to die. Slowly that guy's eyes started to turn red. And finally the guy took his sword and stabbed himself. The boy decided to ask one last time, what was the name of the new ruler of the clan? The head replied that his name was Jin Sohun. That same day, the clan had to find out that the killer Scarlet Squad lost the battle. Ji replied that it was correct and he had already returned their payment. And they also said that Jin Sohun doesn't care about beauties at all. Besides, he ordered the flying dagger to be killed. Lim asked, is the dagger dead? Ji replied that the dancing sword school immediately buried the body. When the Scarlet Squad did the exhumation, they found the dagger's corpse. While examining the body, there was one oddity. He must have committed suicide. Lim was surprised and asked, suicide? Ji means he drank poison? Ji answered no, it seems he killed himself with his own sword. That's different from committing suicide to keep a secret. It's more like he was forced to commit suicide. Ji told Lim to call the head of the criminal organizations. Fortunately, so far, Jin Sohun has not contacted them. He suggests that they team up with the other leaders and get rid of Sohun. Lim thought for a moment and replied that they would do so. Lim ordered Ji to get everything ready for the meeting. Just then, the girl who was behind him came to him. Lim asked Mio that she said she knew the girl from the dancing sword school. Mio sighed and replied to Lim to ignore it. Did he forget that the great Demoness had taken her as her apprentice? And then Lim hesitated and asked, is she a disciple of a great Demoness? Even if she once belonged to the school of the dancing sword, unlikely to be taken from the hands of the great Demoness. But it can't be left askew like that. Sohun received a letter that the head of the Sun Dragon, Lim Hasten, had sent him an invitation to the leaders' meeting. Chu asked, "The meeting?" Sohun replied, "Yes, it will be held at the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School. Each organization is allowed to bring up to 10 people. Chu asked, "Will it go through here?" He doesn't know what they're up to, but you have to be prepared for anything. Sohun said that the head who held the first meeting died, right? Chu replied, "Yes." Sohun asked, "Then why are these meetings still being held?" Chu replied that the thing is that the factions of the Dark Path are always competing with each other. They would rather die than give in to someone. Sohun said that's why most heretics die before they turn 30. Chu thought for a moment and said that he didn't think he should give such a speech. It would be very unreasonable. Sohun asked Chu what he would do if he met an opponent he couldn't handle. Chu replied that he didn't know. Would he try to fight him? Sohun replied no. He should run without looking back. Become stronger and only then fight. What if he can't run away? Sohun replied that then he should bat. If that happens, he needs to forget about the difference between the strength of their energies and combat skills. Let him fight with the sole purpose of tearing his opponent to pieces with his bare hands. And then Chu thought hard. Chu said he would remember his words. For the evening Sohun arranged a meeting and coming out to them asked, "Is everyone here?" His men replied that everything was in place. And then Sohun began to analyze them and saw that their gazes were full of determination. Sohun said he got them together to have a few drinks. And he thought they all deserved it. Especially after their training. And then Sohun poured a drink for everyone that even the warriors grew determined and told everyone to raise their bowls. Pouring Sohun said that as they all know, tomorrow is the gathering of the leaders. All the elite of the Dark Path will be here. And they're not coming here to negotiate. And there are only 6 of them. All the warriors immediately thought about his words. Sohun said that he could see that they were all excited. At the leaders' meeting, strangely enough, the head of the organization would be present, so it didn't matter how many warriors came with them. Sohun raised his glass and told them to just try not to die. Everyone at that moment blushed at his words. Sohun said that then he in turn would take care of the rest. All the warriors rejoiced and said that they would fight to the last man. The next day, all the clans gathered at the pavilion and molested with their warriors and clan flags. They are joined by the alliance of the Sun Dragon Lim, Wolf Swordsman of the North Wind. The Clan of the 5 Poisons. Clan of the Dark Spirit. The Eagle Clan. Lim said that it seems everyone is gathered, well, it's time to go. Lim said that as they had agreed, only 10 people from each organization could go inside, the rest would have to wait here. Lim asked, "Everything is fine, right?" The man from the other clan replied that everything was fine. Lim turned to the head of the 5 Poisons and said that he was asking him to guide them in. The head immediately headed for the entrance. Opening the doors, Chu waited for them and said that he welcomed them, "Gentlemen. He is the captain of the Phantom Squad of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School." Chu introduced himself and said that the meeting would be held on the 2nd floor. Everything is already prepared. A room for 6 people is waiting for them. The clan heads immediately realized that they wanted them to leave their entourage downstairs. Chu said he would lead them there. Let the rest of them wait here. As they went up to the 2nd floor, they were surprised that all the seats were empty, and the head of the dancing sword himself was not waiting for them. The clan leaders saw that he wasn't here. They thought he would wait for them here and introduce himself to everyone. Chu says he is asking them to take their seats. And he will bring the master to them. Lim thought that this captain was just now going to call him out. He decided to show up last. I guess he's trying to make an impression. Lim got very angry and realized that this ringleader had surpassed them. The Poison Clan laughed and said how interesting. And suggested that everyone sit down to start. And then Sohun came down and said that he thanked them all for coming. The heads immediately turned around and thought, is this really Jin Sohun? He is younger than they thought. The head said his name was Sohun. Lim thought, how dare this little guy speak to them as an equal. They all looked around at each other. And then the head of Poison told Sohun that he had killed the leader of the Western Dark Road and taken his place. Let him accept congratulations. Sohun replied that he was not proud of it. The head of the poison said that, however, he had appropriated all the lands of the previous master. Sohan said he did. The head of the poison asked him in surprise, does he really believe it? The head of venom told Sohan if he wanted to take control of this land, he needed to be strong enough to rule it. But as far as he knew, he had dissolved the Blood Whirlwind clan. Sohan replied that that was correct. And the supply of Nepenthe, which was run by the Whirlwind clan, has now been suspended. The Five Poisons clan was the biggest customer. It's not good, they've lost their supplier. Plus the Blood Vortex bought poisons from them from time to time. Again, not good. They lost a customer. Immediately, Sohan remembered the former head of the Vortex saying that they had bought the poisons. And now Sohan realized who had sold them the antidote. The head of Venom told them to listen. Their organizations were often in competition with each other. However, they must now unite into a single society for the common good. That's why they're here. That's what he's getting at, Mr. Sohan. The Nepenthe market is empty, and his organization can take advantage of it. What does he say to that? Sohan thought and replied, who in short he just wants to take over part of the street, right? And then one of the clan leaders slammed his fist on the table and told Sohan to show some respect, and called him a puppy. He asked Sohan, who gave him the right to speak to his elders like that? Sohan asked in surprise, right? Sohan told the head that he was still going to teach manners. Can we stop sitting here and rolling each other's balls? It's time to get down to business. Sohan saw everything in their eyes and said that they were not very brave guys. So he decided that he would start first. Sohan said they had two choices. Either they all obey him or he will kill them all. Either they join him or let them attack. And then the head from one clan said it was some 2 chairs. Sohan said they could attack all at once or one at a time. According to the traditions of the Dark Path factions, the winner takes all and the loser will submit to it. The clan head said that if they attacked him all together. Sohan interrupted him and said that if they attacked in a crowd, he would kill them all. Everyone was surprised by his words. And then Sohan said that, to be honest, he hoped they would all attack at once. The ringleaders wondered why he had so much hubris. He really expects to defeat them all. And then one of the heads stood up and told Sohan that he was a swordsman wolf, and he decided that he would fight him one-on-one. Sohan immediately got up from his chair and told the wolf swordsman to come over. The wolf swordsman didn't bother much, and that very minute pounced on him with his attack. Sohan immediately pulled out his blade in the moment, and with a movement of his hand, he blocked his attack in a second. All the ringleaders were very much surprised by such actions. Sohan did not lag behind and began to attack himself. The sword wolf tried with all his might to repel his attacks, but he found it all very difficult. And then the wolf swordsman stopped with thoughts of what it was now. Why his sword had gotten even heavier in a second. It's hard to fend off his attacks with such a light weapon. Sohan is much stronger than him. And then the head of Venom saw that Wolf was being squeezed. If even Wolf couldn't handle it, the other head would go along for the ride. The heads realized and saw that they had a chance as long as the swordsman distracted him. Immediately they crossed glances with the old man of poison. Sohan was pushing a little more at this point, which the wolf swordsman began to get scared and realized that he wouldn't be able to pull it off for long at this rate. The wolf swordsman decided and realized that he needed to find vulnerability. And that's when Wolf used his crushing attack of amplified swing. But the others weren't left out either and attacked with a phantom thread, a poisonous volley, all 3 of them. Sohan saw the others jumping on him too. The wolf saw that 2 more guys stayed back. Sohan didn't spare them all at this point, and with his crushing attacks, he cut all the attackers to pieces. The old man also released his poison with an attack. Sohan stopped for a second and began to repel his attack. The old man rejoiced at that moment. He saw that he had hit the target with his poison. Sohan couldn't fully fend off the attack, and let one part of his body go uncovered, and the old man hit right there. The old man began to cheer and laugh at Sohan. He said that Parnisha is quite strong, yes. But now he is poisoned by his 5 poisons. And in that case, he won't last long. Sohan got angry and turned to the other 2 and asked, was he still undecided? The 2 clan leaders were frightened by his question and remained silent. the moment Sohun turned into a monster and started charging at everyone. And then the heads realized that Sohun was testing them to see how they would behave. And then one of the heads fell to his knees. He said that the Eagle clan swore allegiance to him, the head of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. And then Lim also fell to his knees and said that the alliance of the Sun Dragon was at his service and obedience. And they apologized to him for hiring assassins to kill him. And they will accept whatever punishment he gives them. The wolf swordsman said the same thing, that since he had lost, he would serve him like everyone else who knelt. The old man went mad and asked the other heads what they were doing. He is poisoned by his poisons. Sohun turned to the Sun Dragon Alliance, the Eagle clan, the wolf swordsman of the North Wind, and ordered that they kill the head of the Five Poison clan. The head of the Five Poisons clan said that his potions must have clouded his judgment. They won't take orders from a dying man. And then the clan head said that they would do everything according to his order. The head of poison was surprised and out of surprise asked, "What?" They all surrounded the old man together, while the poison head shouted that they had gotten a grip. After all, the guy was going to die soon. The heads also pulled out their blades and were on their way to kill the head of the poisons. The old man was thinking at this moment, how did everything come to this? The old man asks them again, are they crazy? He was sent 5 poisons and would soon die without an antidote. And then Li realized that it was possible. However, a poisoned man could not look so horrifying. He looked more like a demon about to devour them. The warriors immediately readied their blades to bid him farewell in one motion. The old man saw that they were all throwing themselves at him, so he stepped back and started fighting them with his poison. The old man did not have time to repel all the attacks, and out of fright he shouted for them to stop. And no one was going to obey him and attacked. Lim realized that this old man was an idiot himself who didn't realize what was happening now. He's not poisoned. He's only testing their abilities. If they can't prove their usefulness, they will all die an agonizing death soon. Lim thought that if he, the sent assassin, wanted to survive, he needed to kill him with his own hands. And then Lim in flight decided to use the Sun Dragon's killing blow. The old man saw this and realized that things were bad. The old man did not have time to repel this attack, and from his blunder he dared his arm from Lim's attack. And at that moment all the heads emptied their swords into him, and pierced him from different sides to kill him finally. And lastly Lim decided to end it all at once. He decapitated the old man with his attack so that he would surely die. And then they all appeared before Sohun, and Lim said that he had killed the head of the Five Poison clan as he had ordered. Just then, Sohun walked up and addressed the head of the alliance. Lim immediately replied that he was ready to listen to orders. Sohun says that he was the one who was supposed to die in that meeting. He is faithful that Lim himself knows why. And then Lim realized everything and kneeled down and said that he knew everything. And again he asked for forgiveness from the chapters. Sohun said he would keep an eye on him. Lim lowered his head before him and answered what he had heard. Sohun ordered the wolf and the eagle to call off their boys and have them all drink with him tonight. Sohun ordered them to follow him. And then he saw that the head of the dragon had stayed behind and said that he was also concerned. Lim bowed to him and said that he thanked the master. Immediately they all sat down at the table to drink. But only Sohun himself was left alive. Sohun at this moment thought that they had obeyed him, but here was the Ghost Sword clan, using force. He wondered at times like this whether to kill them or subdue them. He decided he would spare them all for now. In the morning, the leaders began to come to their senses. And immediately Sohun asked them all, are they awake already? Lim thought at this moment, how long had he been asleep? Had the other 2 fallen asleep too? And then Lim thought, had they been poisoned while they slept? Sohun said they were sleeping so soundly that he didn't want to wake them up. Lim immediately apologized. Lim thought that if he had decided to kill them in their sleep, they would have died without knowing how they accepted death. And then in a moment the eagle woke up and said that he was asking the head for forgiveness, because he had accidentally fallen asleep. Sohun told him not to worry about it. Sohun realized that they had already realized that he could take their lives at any moment. Sohun asked them, where were they at? Sun Dragon, didn't he have something to tell him? Lim replied that he remembered and was going to say about the survivor of the Crescent Moon Sword School. Sohun asked, a survivor of the Dancing Sword School? Lim answered yes. She was the lowest-ranked martial artist, so no one really knew her. But the great Demoness took her as her apprentice. Sohun asked in surprise, the great Demoness? Lim said he thought she used a pseudonym, but it slipped his mind. Sohun said to the head of the Sun Dragon Alliance. Did he expect him to fight the great Demoness by offering this information? Lim replied, of course not. He had heard that Sohun was looking for survivors. If he decided to fight her, he would also support him in the battle. Sohun asked him if he knew where the great Demoness was now. Lim replied that he would tell the servants to look for her. Wolf immediately said that there were rumors that she was somewhere in the Channon Dark Faction's territory, so she could be found in no time. Sohun said that the great Demoness takes only beautiful girls for valuables. And of course, they have to be virgins. They also say she kills students who lose their virginity. Except for her high standards of beauty, there's no idea about her. Regarding how he will spare or kill, even if they are divinely beautiful, she can still kill them. For example, for being rude. Nothing and no one limits her. That's why she's a demon and crazy. Even though she is completely insane, she is called a great Demoness because she is so damn strong. Channon will not call her a great Demoness in the near future. Immediately, everyone replied to the Lord that everything was correct. Sohun realized that they were only called apprentices. The Demoness doesn't teach them how to fight. She simply nurtures their internal energy to a certain degree, then absorbs them, preserving their youth. But in such moments, Sohun doesn't know who has become her student, but he is obliged to save her at the cost of his life. In the morning, Sohun brought his men up and asked what they all thought of yesterday's clan leaders. They were all surprised by this question and were silent. Sohun replied that they understood why they needed to become stronger, right? And then the warriors replied that they understood. Sohun said that they should not be discouraged about it. The Dark Faction does not bet on their abilities, but on their interactions with each other. Therefore, he has a separate role for them. And Sohun also added that they only obeyed him, not the leaders. Of course, he must still respect them as long as they hold their positions. Let them all remember it, whatever they do from now on. And then all answered that they had heard the Lord. Finally, he decided that he would meet the Demoness. Chu asked that the head was referring to the Demoness of the four great demons. Sohun replied that this was correct. When he saw the faces of the others he was surprised and asked them what was the matter. Chu replied that he was concerned. It wasn't that he doubted him, but the four great demons were people that even pure factions couldn't catch. Sohun said that's right, the four great demons are like that. But that title, soon to become three great demons. At this time, Sohun arrived at the Channon Faction Azure Coast Plum Pavilion. Sohun sat at the feast and drank. In a moment, he recalled Chu's words, saying that the great Demoness had been seen in the territory of the Channon Neo-Orthodox faction. That's what the message from the head of the Sun Dragon said. Sohun had been here for a month and still couldn't find her. I wonder who she's taking as an apprentice. Based on what his teacher told him, the great Demoness absorbs the life energy of her female students to prolong their youth and become stronger. And so he needs to save them as soon as possible. And then a girl came up to him and asked him what he was doing, and alone? The girl asked him if he would like to have a drink with her. Sohun didn't turn around and told her to get lost. And then the girl was surprised and apologized, asking him again. Sohun replied that she should get out of here. The girl took offense and started walking away, saying that he was rude. Sohun at this point was saying that he was pissed off. And then the girl turned to her older sister and said that he had rejected another girl. How many have there been? The older one told the younger one not to bother herself with such nonsense, let her just enjoy her drink. Junior said she wanted to do it, but she couldn't take her eyes off him. Really, he's very handsome, isn't he? The older one said she had had enough. The younger one started to smile and told her sister that she was right. And then Elda started drinking and not controlling herself. Junior told her sister that she was acting a little differently today. Is something wrong? After all, she suddenly says she doesn't want to go back. And she drinks so much, even though the teacher told them never to try alcohol. What were the thoughts that plagued her mind? The older one turned to the younger one and asked, had she ever seen other older sisters die? The younger one answered no. The teacher said they were taken by the demon of lust, one of the 4 great demons, or killed by the pure ones. The older one said that's what she was saying. The truth is, they never saw them die. None of them had ever seen an elder die in all that time. Maybe they were killed by the teacher herself, and then the older sister came up to them and said that's where they are. And the younger sister told her to see who it was. The elder said, isn't this the second apprentice of their master? And then the girl said, showing her respect. She said her older sister's teacher was looking for her. The older one asked her, didn't she? Okay, she'll come as soon as she's done with that. Since she's already here, let her sit down and have a glass. The girl says she has to go immediately. She's totally furious. And then the elder turned to her and asked her, did she hear her? Either let her drink the good way or the bad way. I mean, she has to finish it anyway. What would she choose? And then she made her peace and sat down at the table with them. The older one said she should have done that from the beginning. And she can't seem to get along with her. I wonder if it's because she was found in some asshole cult. And then the girl turned to her younger sister and told her to just listen to her expression. And then Sohun heard everything and thought over the words asshole sect. The younger one said that the face of the second elder sister always expresses the same thing. And then Sohun approached them and asked if he could join the lovely ladies. And then the elder asked, what a trivial question. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And then the girls said that the teacher told them not to socialize with men. And immediately they all fixated on him. Sohun realized that he had come because he thought their asshole sect was the Sun Dragon Alliance. And since her master said not to socialize with men, there was a good chance that they were apprentices of a great demoness. They look pretty young. I wonder if she was the one who was taken away from the dancing sword school when he was kidnapped. It doesn't matter. If he's from the dancing sword school, he has to save her. And then the eldest asked Sohun that he seemed to be interested in the other older sister. If that's the case, let him sit with them. Immediately the girl didn't like it and shouted to her elder sister. Sohun interrupted them and said that the drinks were on him. The elder said that she could take care of herself. Sohun replied that then he would let her take care of him. The older one said that wouldn't do. She asked him who he was. After all, is he acting like this even though he knows who they are? Sohun replied that he was here for a woman. And then the elder was surprised and asked who he thought they were. Sohun says that's not what he meant. He's looking for the girl that the Sun Dragon Alliance disguised as a man. And then the girl heard it and blushed. The elder asked the girl, does she know him? And then Sohun realized that he was right about her. Sohun said he's from the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School. His name is Zasoniai. I wonder if she remembers his name. At that moment, the girl was very much surprised and asked, Zasonia? She couldn't believe it was Zasonia. Sohun replied that that was right, his name was Zasonia. What is her name? And then the girl answered that her name was Dam Wool. Sohun asked surprised, Dam Wool? Dam said, she came to the dancing sword schools after he disappeared. Si Wool, who took care of her, often talked about him. He always remembered him and said he wanted to see him. Sohun asked Dam, he cared for her too, right? In that case she is his friend. Dam was surprised and thought, what friend? They had just met. Dame lowered her head and realized that he was indeed as she had been described to him at school. She cried and thanked him for calling her his friend. And then the girls were both surprised. The younger one told the first sister that the second sister was crying now. Dam said he needed to leave. If her mistress found out he was here with them, he would be in trouble, to put it mildly. Dam immediately turned to the first sister. The older one asked her what was wrong. Dam asked her not to tell Madam about what had happened here. He asks her like a little sister. The older one hesitated and thought, is this the Snow Queen asking her for a favor now? The elder took it all in and said she would keep quiet. Sohun asked, her mistress is a great demoness. Immediately, they were surprised. Sohan said that then her cultivation technique should be a golden mystic jade art. She must have told them that only virgin girls who hadn't had intercourse with a man could quickly build up internal energy with the true mystical art of eyeing. Is he right about this? Dom was surprised and asked him how he knew about it. Sohan replied that it was possible anyway. They didn't know that the great demoness absorbed the energies of virgin girls. Immediately, they all froze in the moment. Sohan continued that she was absorbing not only their internal energy, but also their core energy. This technique was originally called true demonic purification art. Dam didn't believe it and said that it was impossible and asked why would Ms. And then the younger one turned to the first sister to say something. This man is slandering their mistress. The older one asked Dum why she wasn't surprised. Did she know about it too? Dum replied that not really. She didn't know the details, but she was thinking about how strange it was that mistress didn't age. The younger one asked, what does she mean? Second elder sister, does she mean that he is telling the truth? At that time, mistress asked her students in her own voice where they had disappeared to. The girls immediately became frightened at that moment. Dam turned to Sohan and said their mistress is here. Have him quickly hide somewhere. The older one told the boy to listen to her. If he delayed even a moment, he would lose his life. Immediately Sohan took a jug and poured himself a drink. Dam shouted to him that this was not the time to drink wine. Just then mistress appeared and said herself that it was too late. She immediately saw that they were all sitting with a man. Sohan saw her and was surprised that she had personally come here. Immediately the girls fell on their knees and greeted her. Mistress asked her students what was going on here. The eldest replied that he suddenly wanted to join their table, bringing alcohol. They were telling him to leave. Let mistress ignore him. And then the mistress said that to think he wanted to drink with her students, let them kill him now. The girl thought and said that he thought he was one of the Chanano faction of the Dark Path. Wouldn't that be reckless? And then the mistress replied that it would not. Did the mistress say she was imagining things, or was the girl getting feisty these days? It often happens when people learn the mystic arts. And then the girl realized that she had noticed her change in mood. Mistress said that just as they were about to find out what she had accomplished, someone from the Chanan faction would be perfect. Let her kill him to purify her heart. Then she will forgive her for what happened today. And then Sohan said that he could not verify that a teacher could so easily order his student to kill an innocent person. And then the lady was surprised and asked, what? At this time the girl was thinking, what on earth is this guy doing? Mistress said she wondered, did he even know who she was? And then Sohan drank his wine and told her to get off in a haze. She's so stinky that he can't have a proper drink. And then mistress started laughing and said apparently he's crazy, is she right? And then she moved even closer to him and said she wondered how she could best finish him off to appease her anger. Mistress has seen and known men like him. Right up until the moment of death, they all react the same way when they see her face. Mistress immediately used her red eye and realized that he wouldn't even know how he was going to die. And then Sohan smiled and told her to put her veil back on. And didn't she hear him tell her to get lost? Mistress didn't like the way Sohan was talking to her. So she immediately decided she needed to teach him a lesson and attacked him. Sohan immediately reacted and hit her back. The clashing double attacks scattered them in different directions. But the mistress immediately attacked him again. Sohan had anticipated all this and dodged her attack. Everyone was surprised and mistress also said that it was not bad. She asked him why he had gotten close to her students. Where did he come to them from? Sohan answered nothing and with his blades decided to attack. The mistress saw his weapon surprised and realized that they were moon blades. Is he really a disciple of the poison demon? The girls immediately heard that he was a poison demon, one of the 4 demons just like their mistress. Dam was very much in thought at this moment, for she had heard that he was a disciple of the poison demon. The lady said she wondered where the old man had gone. She now sees that he was training his successor. She said it was poisonous demon lowly of him to send that boy to her. Have him come out at once. Just then Sohan smiled and said, he is not here. The mistress asked in surprise, he is not here? How dare he behave so defiantly when his master is not even around? Sohan replied that it was not that important. After all, he did not need his teacher to straighten her out. Mistress immediately became enraged and shouted that he was an insolent creature as he attacked. She decided not to walk and unleashed her snake into the battle. Sohun was fast enough to dodge her attack, and immediately lowered himself to the ground to look at her again. At this moment, Mistress thought that the boy's teacher could be hiding anywhere. After all, if she cornered the little rat, he would show up. Immediately the mistress used her snake and said that now they would see how long he would last. Sohun didn't wait for her attack and decided to attack first. Mistress saw that he was trying to shorten the distance to make it harder for her to use the whip. Launching an attack, her whip grazed Sohun's face, which he even felt, but he didn't slow down and brought the attack to an end. Sohun was so angry with her that he was ready to devour her completely, not even leaving a piece of her bone. Madam kept saying what a fool one had to be to attack so recklessly. And then she thought, the kid might be a poison demon's apprentice, but he was still a kid. Mistress immediately turned around and released her whip into the attack again, but with an even greater speed of attack. Sohun saw the attack coming at him from behind. He immediately dodged in the moment, and decided to retaliate. But the whip still grazed his shoulder to the point of bleeding, but Mistress didn't relent and kept cinching him with her rope. With each of her attacks, Sohun received wounds all over his body. But he wasn't ready to give up, so he decided to fight to the end. The lady saw that this guy continues to attack mindlessly. Apparently, he wants to shorten the distance and use poison. Mistress, realizing his plan, said, "No way." And then she struck a straight blow with her whip. Mistress said he still seems to have enough strength to stand on his feet. Not a bad kid, really. And then Sohun realized that this was the power of demons. Not only does it prevent them from getting closer, but it also prevents them from using poisons. Sohun smiled and said that it was fun, though. The lady saw his face and wondered why he was smiling. Looks like he's crazy. Just like a mentally ill old man. In that case, she would no longer hold back. Sohun stood still at the moment of the attack, and with his blades began to repel her many attacking attacks. Sohun didn't give up and kept repelling her attacks to wait for the only moment to deliver a crushing blow. Mistress saw another way out, and with her whip she removed the beam so that the house came down on the lad. But Sohun saw it at once. And then everything collapsed and the girls were frightened very much, realizing that Zasonia had lost in this battle. Everything was falling on him. Mistress said that it seems the poison demon had put a lot of effort into his training, but apparently all for nothing. Immediately, an attack came out of the smoke and was directed at the mistress. She immediately saw that it was poisonous energy. Mistress set up her whip to repel the attack and thought that could it really be that he had such powerful poison energy under his control. Sohun emerged from the smoke as a glowing man, which even made the mistress' eyes rise to her forehead. Sohun immediately did not relax and pounced on her. The mistress was surprised to see Sohun approaching her. Sohun immediately used a crushing wave of his blades. Mistress was ready for this attack and immediately counterattacked with a tornado sweep. And connected with a spinning whip. Mistress was sure that her attack would protect her. But Sohun used all his power, and cut her whip into pieces. At that moment, the mistress managed to move aside, and the attack hit the building behind her. Mistress said that he was hiding all of his true strength. Sohun at this moment smiled with a caustic laugh and headed out to attack. Sohun ran toward her so fast that Mistress couldn't track his speed. But she used her whip for backup. Sohun didn't care anymore, he was ready to go through the whip with such speed that it wouldn't hit him. Mistress was surprised and said that the guy was fast. At this point she lost her temper and attacked him, which caused an explosion. The mistress flew upward and hoped he was dead. But Sohun defended himself and stood inside the smoke like a hero. But blood kept dripping from his all the time, but that didn't stop him. Sohun told Demonis that he would present her sinful body as a gift to his teacher for experimentation. Mistress immediately realized that he wished to make her a lab rat of a poison demon. Why he's so sure of himself, being wounded. I wonder if she's already been poisoned. But she can't be. She definitely blocked the poison with the whip. Mistress immediately released her whip and told him to shut up. Sohun immediately set up his blade. The mistress saw that she had grabbed his weapon and immediately pulled it towards her. Sohun did not let go of his weapon, and flew after her. Mistress said she would tear him to pieces. Sohun immediately used his blade in the moment and pointed it at her. And then the mistress was surprised that he let go of his blade. But at that moment Sohun attacked from the other side while she was fixated on the other. Sohun saw that she would have time to use her whip and used a technique to turn around from the attacks, and at the last moment grabbed her by the throat and lifted her into the air. Sohun at that moment began to shine like garlands and said that she was caught. And then the mistress wondered if she had fallen for this trick. Sohun only craves death for her and said that there are only 3 great demons from today. Mistress realized that it was over and told him to stop. Sohun did not listen to her and strangled her with one hand. After snapping her neck, Sohun tossed her body aside. Everyone was surprised that he had handled the great demoness. And then the messages reached the stranger and she asked, "What did the great demoness lose to the demon of lust?" It was the head of the Channon faction named Guasejok. The servant replied to the gentleman that it was true, such news had arrived. Gu Sa said that they say the great demoness lost last night. Gua asked, why would a lust demon kill a great demoness? Gu replied that they say he came to her female disciples with alcohol. And he was caught by the demoness while looking for her students, so a battle ensued. Gua asked Gua, is he sure it's a lust demon? Gu said yes. Doesn't that make sense? Who else would be able to handle a demoness? And her female disciples are famous for their beauty. However, he did not touch them. They followed him of their own free will. Gua said he would ask again, did the demon of lust kill the demoness? Gu replied once again to the gentleman that everything was correct. She was killed by a young guy, apparently he had changed his appearance. There's no other way to explain it. Gua said, these 4 great demons. It was only worth it for him to relax for a second. How dare these brats cause confusion in the Channon Neo-Orthodox faction? Sohun and the girls set off from there. When they arrived at the pavilion, Sohun set up a table for them to have a drink. Dam turned to Zasona and asked him how did he become a disciple of a poison demon. Sohun replied that he had been kidnapped. Dam was surprised and asked, is that why he disappeared? Sohun replied that she understood correctly. One of the 4 great demons stole him. And then the younger girl said, is Zohan's teacher really that scary? She had heard a lot about him from Mistress. Sohun replied that he was. His obsession with experiments knows no bounds. He conducts them on living people. And he's never satisfied. And then Sohun realized that thanks to his resistance, however, the teacher had gotten carried away and the kidnappings had stopped. Sohun said that he wanted them not to tell anyone that they were disciples of the great demons. Because there is no place in Jianghu where disciples of the 4 great demons are welcome. The Orthodox will hunt them down if they find out about it. And then the elder girl replied that they had heard him. But she wondered, what had he done with the whip of the 100-dragon mistress? Sohun replied that he had taken care of it, as well as the demoness body. And then Dam was surprised and said that it was a powerful weapon. Sohun replied that this was true, and it had taken thousands of lives, including innocent lives. Besides, more than one martial artist of the Orthodox faction had fallen from this whip. If anyone sees this whip in his hands, all the dark and light paths will come after him. Sohun got up from his chair and told the ladies that it was time for him to go and wished them a good evening. Sohun needed to relax, so he immediately went to take a jacuzzi. Sitting in the water, he realized that hot springs felt much better now that his wounds were healed. And now in a moment he wondered how his teacher would react when word spread that he had single-handedly handled the demoness. At this moment, Sohun saw a few suspicious guys who were wearing tattoos lined up in front of him. And then Gu himself came in and introduced himself, saying that he was showing his respect to the demon of lust. Gu realized that this demon was unrivaled in face-swapping techniques. He must be amazed that he recognized him. Sohun asked if they were for him. Gu replied that is correct. Sohun asked, who is he calling this demon of lust? And then Gu thought and realized that he seemed to have made a mistake. Sohun immediately got up out of the water and everyone was surprised. Gu saw and imagined those horrible wounds, if they were from all the warriors he had passed, then. Gu asked, Mr. Raging Demon?" Sohan immediately came out of the water and said that Gu was just a real jerk. Gu immediately started looking at his body, which was covered with scars. Gu said he knew it, there was a lust demon in front of him. Sohan became very angry and immediately looked at him strangely. And then Guo met Gu and told him he'd rather just die. And called him a disgrace. Gu fell to his knees and said in shame that he apologized to him. Guo said that not only did he manage and not to find out anything, but to come back with his face like that? Here in Channan, his abode, Gu replied that he asked him nicely and then he beat him up. His hand is heavy, to say the least. Gu immediately got angry and asked who the hell is he? Gu replied that he has a bunch of scars all over his body. This is the body of a battle-hardened man. Given its explosive nature, he thinks it's a raging demon. Guo was surprised and said to let all 4 great demons die. First the lady, then the boy, and now this psycho. It's like the dark path is some kind of back alley for them. And immediately ordered them all to be rounded up. The warrior told the Lord that it didn't matter if he was one of the great demons or not, but the demoness had lost to him in a one-on-one battle. Guo asked him, what did he think this faggot would be able to fend against the entire Channan Neo-Orthodox faction? And this one let them send him to the kitchen, let him serve the food. And immediately the warrior said that he obeyed and let Gu stand up. In the morning, the girls asked Zasonia if he had a good night's rest. And then the elder sister said that he was the demon of lust. He must not have slept at all. And then Zasonia said, how many times do I have to tell you, he's not a demon? And then big sister laughed and said, of course, of course. And then Zasonia said that he was not his student. And then the girls said that she seemed to read his mind. And then Junior told Senior that she was behaving unusually. Sohan felt something at that moment and looked towards the window. At this point, there were a lot of people gathered in front of the pavilion who had come for a reason. It was Go, with his large army. He angrily ordered his men to bring him his head. A few people went into the pavilion to get the guy outside. But after a couple minutes, they were out of there like corks. And then Sohan came out and asked, who dares to disturb him so early in the morning? And then Go asked him, is he a raging demon? Sohan sighed heavily and said one more word and he would become one. Yesterday he was called a demon of lust, today a raging demon. Guo asked the guy that it wasn't him. Sohan immediately replied that of course not. And then Go introduced himself and said that if the guy is a raging demon, then who is he, and why is he causing trouble in Channan? It's his territory after all. Sohan replied that he was a Chenyang Nightblade named Jin Sohan. Guo was surprised and asked, Nightblade? Guo said the guy is talking about Chenyang where the alliances of the Sun Dragon and Blood Whirlwind clan are located. Sohan replied that this was correct. Guo asked, and what did the Chenyang man forget on his land? Does his master know he is here? Sohan asked, why would they know? After all, he was their lord himself. And then Go was surprised and thought that this brat was their leader. And if this guy is telling the truth, it would be stupid to bully him. Did Guo tell Sohan that he must be the leader of the faction on the Shanxi border? Could he inquire as to why he had killed the demoness? Sohan replied that he shouldn't care. Guo accepted this and said that in that case, could he hand over the disciples of the great demoness to them? They have unfinished business with them. And then Big Sister came out and said that they guys seemed to have grown balls as soon as Mistress was gone. And then all the warriors with Guo were surprised to find out that they were her students. With such beauties, anyone could become a demon of lust. Guo asked what was their connection to each other. Sohan immediately replied that it was only the past. Guo clutched his hand with nerves and realized that this guy was pissing him off. Guo said he realized that they knew each other. However, if they want to avoid unnecessary problems it's better to let the guy give it to him. The elder realized that they weren't close enough yet for him to go up against an entire faction alone. And then Sohan replied that it was not going to happen. It was not in his plans. The girls were immediately happy to hear these words. Guo immediately lost his temper and said that he was the law here and always had been. And always will be. And then Sohan revealed his fan and said that he was the law of the dark path ruling here. That's how it was before and that's how it will be after. Immediately all the warriors were surprised at this answer of the lad. Sohun asked, "Damn, how strong are they? Should he worry about them during the battle?" And then Dum replied to Zasona that they could handle it. The eldest also said that it was exactly like that. They are, after all, apprentices of a great demoness. Sohun said that there seems to be a storm coming. Gua asked the guy what is he even carrying. He immediately with the girls attacked them. Everyone was surprised to see such a performance. Sohun in the air at the moment sent a storm of venom at them all. Gua seeing this in a moment grabbed his blade and used a slashing gust of wind. But everything was useless against such an attack from Sohun. The girls weren't left out either, and with their whips swooped down on the others to get rid of them once and for all. Guo was surprised and saw that the disciples of the great demoness were so strong. Sohun immediately walked over to him and said, he reflected the slashing gust of wind, "Not bad." Go saw him and became even angrier, and began to launch his attacks recklessly. Sona immediately used his fan and repelled the attack. Go didn't stop there, and launched a barrage of attacks from him. But Sohun was even stronger and repelled all his attacks. Sohun told Go that he still thinks he's the law here. Ridicule. Gua hearing those words got angry and shouted at him to shut his mouth. Sohun didn't mess with him much, and using a hook he launched a fan attack on Gua's liver. Gua stopped and realized that he couldn't feel his hands anymore. This brat is so strong that it's hard to resist him. At this time the girls didn't stop and killed everyone in the way with their whips. Go saw that he was losing and realized that these chicks were strong too. At this point the girls fought like it was the last time. They were up against men with a lot of experience in combat. The girls sensed and said these guys are pretty good fighters. Apparently they're the captains of these assholes. Sohun watched them and thought that the girls could definitely handle them. Guo looked at him and saw that he wasn't focused on the battle at all. Guo decided to take advantage of this moment, and immediately ran to attack. Realizing that he should not be underestimated, Sohun had anticipated this and easily used his fan to attack. Guo was very surprised that his attack didn't do anything. Sohun would not leave him in a relaxed state and decided to act on his own to exhaust his body. Guo was frightened and thought of stopping this battle. After all, he saw that he was barely reflecting his simple lunges. Guo said loudly at the top of his voice that he would not lose. He immediately pounced on Sohun, hoping to kill him. Sohun responded with a mutual attack. But Guo's sword could not stand up to his fan, and shattered at the slightest touch. Go was sure in the moment that he had done everything, but seeing Sohun's weapon in whole condition and is broken and he was surprised. Sohun embarrassed him and told him to stop it, leaving him lying on his knees. Go realized that he had exhausted everything of himself, and it appeared that he was no match for him. After all, his weapon is above his jaw. Guo shouted to his men to stop. They stopped. And then the warriors turned around and saw that their leader had lost. The warriors turned to the Lord. Guo became angry and immediately shouted for them to lay down their weapons. The warriors obeyed him and immediately stopped. Sohun did not let him go and held him to the last. Sohun told Guo that he would continue to treat him as the head of the Channan faction. However, from now on, he is subordinate to him, and Channan is now part of the Chenyang faction. If he agrees, then they will proceed further. And he can still choose an outright death. Go accepted his defeat with dignity and said that he would serve Sohun. Sohun immediately ordered him to withdraw his men, and have him along with the captains waiting for him at the inn. Guo was surprised and thought, is that all? He heard his answer and left. Sohun turned to the girls and asked if they were okay. And then they told him that they were fine. Sohun said they could go back inside then. The captains asked Go, are they really going to serve him? The captain said it wasn't too late. He scouted the area before they got here. They don't have reinforcements. Also, if he comes alone, they'll have a chance. And they'll accept whatever he tells them to do. Guo said there was nothing to be done. He's stronger than all of them put together. Fighting him, he didn't even break a sweat. And in the moment of battle, he happened to see two swords of his robes. He defeated him using only a fan. And that's what came out in the end, and immediately showed his arm to the captains. He realized that the last blow had broken his arm, and it's not just him. They're no match for the apprentices of the great Demoness. And then the captains said they apologize. Guo replies that they have nothing to apologize for. He just tells them that they are much stronger than all of them. And then Sohun came in and asked, did they have time to discuss everything? He thought he had given them enough time, and hoped it had been enough. Sohun sat down at the table and asked Mr. Guo if they had decided everything. Guo was surprised and asked, what is the master asking? Have they not already decided to serve him? Sohun asks him where his bloodlust has gone. He realizes that perhaps his priorities have changed slightly. Either way, he would give him time so he could discuss things with his captains. Go realized at that moment that he had gathered them together on purpose so that they would attack him. Sohun said they must be upset, so he wants to give them a chance. He's not comfortable with it himself, and he doesn't want to rule over people who aren't loyal to the core. As far as he's concerned, they're useless, and so that they might all try to attack him. Let them dare and be brave. Take up their swords and come back. He will wait for them all here. But let them keep in mind the fact that they are still breathing only because he decided to spare their lives. It won't happen again. And then Guo marveled with everyone else and realized that he was much stronger than him. Absolutely in everything. Guo made up his mind and asked Sohun how they should address him from now on. Sohun replied that Mr. Guo decided to make the first move and introduced himself and said that he and the Channon faction would serve him. The captains saw their chief rise and bow. They, too, rose after him and said they would act on his instructions. At the pub, a guy asked the others if it was true that the Channon Neo-Orthodox faction had a new leader, and then the waiter said, how many times do I have to tell him? Yes, the new leader. The guy was surprised and replied that he couldn't believe it. After all, it was rumored to be that young statuesque man surrounded by the attractive female disciples of the great Demoness. The other guy replied that that was correct. But that can't be right. Is he saying that the kid did it, killed the great Demoness and subjugated the faction? The waiter said that was correct and because he had seen it with his own eyes. The guy asked him, did he see it with his own eyes? And then Gu Sa's servant Guo's right hand replied that it was correct. He had seen Mr. Jin Sohun in person. The guys were surprised and asked if he was serious. Gu replied that one look at him and he immediately understands everything. He is not an ordinary person, he is outstanding, strong. His whole body was covered with scars. He assures them there is no one in Shinana who can compare to him. Guy asked Gu what was the next step. Gu replied that he reported to the former faction leader, but at that time he didn't know what kind of person Sohun was. He warned his master and told him that this man might be a raging demon. Is he one of the 4 great demons? Gu replied, why do they think he called him that? All 3 of them have to read between the lines. He asked him to be careful because he's so damn strong. The boys were surprised and told Gu that he was really wise. Gu smiled and said that he was a good judge of character. He asked the boys if they knew what happened next. The head did not listen to him and went in search of him and after mobilizing their warriors. And do they know how it ended? He would tell them now. He should have listened to his words. At this time, people were walking near the lake and in a moment they saw the body of the Demoness. The guy asked his friend, is she still warm? The guy said who would have thought she would die like that. The friend also said that he would never have thought that a great Demoness could lose. The boy replied that the upside was that the master would have a good time. He had heard that the apprentices of the great Demoness were virgins. Her students are not easy girls. Not everyone dares to approach them. A friend asked if he thought they had a chance. She has 3 students. The fellow answered him not to speak such heresy in the presence of the master. The friend said that he thought he was the only one here. Then a voice from him asked the guys, did they find her? The guys immediately kneeled down and said yes. At this time, a stranger approached them with great speed and immediately approached the Demoness body. The stranger smiled looking at the Demoness case. He said it was very far-fetched that they were meeting under such circumstances. The boys told Lord that apparently her neck was broken as he grabbed her with his left hand. The Lord asked what weapon was used by the man who killed her. The lad replied that he fought the great Demoness with paired moon blades, and used the ash fan in battle with Go Sajok. And then the master wondered about his weapon. The stranger thought that because there were no cuts on her, he hadn't gotten her with his weapon. In that case, he must have either dropped his weapon during the battle or thrown it at her on purpose so that he could suddenly grab her and break her neck. Isn't that one of the cowardly methods the Dark Ones use when cornered? Since the great Demoness had fought in the streets before, she was visibly discouraged when she lost. The master asked the boys what they said the name of the man who killed her was. The boy replied that his name was Jin Sohun. The master smiled and said, "What a beautiful name. It seems that the immortal witch doctor had raised a monster." The boy asked in surprise, "A witch doctor?" The Lord replied, "Yes, he is also called the demon immortal. He is the twin brother of the poison demon. Even though they are both crazy, the witch doctor would be more dangerous. If the 4 demons were known as the 4 great psychopaths, then the poison demon would be eliminated from there, and his brother would be led by them." The boy asked the master, what was he trying to say, that an immortal healer was crazier than a poison demon? The Lord replied that he assumed so. Once upon a time, a poison demon was severely injured after being trapped by the leader of the Hubei Alliance. But they got hit pretty good, too. Most of the fighters were dead, and the leader was on his last breath. Then suddenly, an immortal appeared. He was able to cure the Alliance leader. The poison demon asked why he was treating the Alliance leader, but the witch doctor didn't answer. Then he saved the rest of the people without even changing his expression. At the end, he took his twin brother and left. And then he realized that compared to the immortal, the 4 demons were still sane people. You have to be careful with the students of such a psychopath, because they may have an inkling of how powerful he might be. And then the boys answered the Lord that they had heard him. The Lord asked, "And where is he now together with the disciples of the great Demoness?" The boy replied that they were staying at Song's Inn. "Is the master going to attack him now?" The gentleman answered, "No. He needs to watch him a little longer. He's a serious obstacle to the Demoness apprentices. There is no rush. Have them keep an eye on Channon from tomorrow. If it's a trap, the immortal should appear soon." The master said that, and about her, they would have to get rid of the body. The boys asked what they should do with her whip. The master replied that they should bury it with her. It would be her gift for raising such fine students. At this time Sohun was having dinner with the girls, unaware that a group of people were following him. Sohun saw that the younger girl was very hungry. Sohun asked her if she was well. Eldest said that they were all so happy since master was gone. And then Junior said that wasn't true. That's just because she's been eating non-stop for days. And she has a very good appetite here. Sohun asked Damwol why she was frowning so much. Was her older sister bullying her again? And then the elder told Sohun to shut up. Dam also replied that that was not the case. The fact was that her younger sister had a dream. Sohun was surprised and asked what kind of dream. Dam replied that in her dream their mistress came and said that Sohun had killed her because he had attacked along with the demon of lust. Sohun was surprised and asked that he was fighting her along with the lust demon. Dam replied that it was like that. And then Sohun said that he thought this guy had appeared in her dream because that fool had asked him if he was a lust demon. Dum said that might be the case. Sohun said that he heard that Dummy was working at some hotel. Gua came to Sohun and said that rumors about him had spread all over Channon. Everyone was already wondering about him becoming the leader of the local Dark Path faction. Just then, Gua finished his drink and asked Sohun if he would like to go for a walk. He would love to hear how he was able to defeat the great Demoness. Sohun thought for a moment and replied that he agreed. Gua thought it was impossible to be around him before, but now they seemed to be able to find common ground. Besides, he was still as respectful to him. Then the captain came and told the head that Gu Sa had arrived. He demands an audience with the Lord. Guo was surprised and told Sohun that he was apologizing for his subordinate. Sohun replied that he would let him come in. Guo said there was no need for that. Sohun replied that he didn't mind hearing him out. Let him come in here. And then Gu came in all wet and sweaty. Everyone was surprised at his condition. Gua asked Gu how dare he disobey. He was told to stay out of sight. Gu replied that he was asking them to forgive him. Sohun asked that he was the bad guy from the hot springs, right? Gu replied that he was correct. And said that he asked to forgive his stupidity that day. Sohun said it was no big deal. Let him say, why did he seek to meet him? Gu remembered and replied that he wanted to warn them about something. Some people asked him. Gua asked, so what? Rumors about Mr. Jin are spreading at the speed of light. It's normal for people to ask about him everywhere. Why would they want to know? Gu said that this person wasn't just asking, he was digging for Mr. Jin. From the looks of it, it was a young guy who was diligently trying to find information about him. He was also looking for information about the great Demoness apprentices. The other day, this guy came into their tavern and started asking about him. He also said that Sohun was accompanied by 3 girls who didn't know the man. And that they were too greedy. Gu said that he tried to follow him, but he disappeared from sight momentarily. Did Gu in the moment think he was coming? Sohun thanked him for the information, because they would need it. Sohun asked him if he was Gu Sa, right? Gu bowed his head and replied that everything was correct. Sohun said that if he has everything, he can go. He is a big good boy. Gu was surprised to hear such words and replied that he was happy to try the Lord. And he thanked them for agreeing to listen to him. And then Gua said it was weird. He wasn't just asking about him, but also about the girls. What does the master think? And then Sohun replied to the head of Go that he had one guess. Guo was surprised and asked what was it. Sohun replied that the faction has a huge information network. They know 2 things about him. The first is that he wants virgin Demoness apprentices. The second, he is not afraid of the Channin faction because he can hide at any time. Gua asked Sohun if he knew who it might be. Sohun immediately replied that he was. Go was curious and asked who he was. Sohun replied that he was a demon of lust. Guo was surprised and said Sohun means that the lust demon is here? In Channin? Sohun replied that yes, and that guy in the tavern is probably his apprentice. Either way, if they don't prepare, they'll be in trouble. Not only is he strong, but he's damn fast. So he can escape at any time. Gua asked, can a martial artist escape? Sohun replied that was correct. He doesn't care about pride when it comes to survival. He can run away as soon as he smells trouble, then attack again the next day. And then Guo wondered if they would be able to catch him. Sohun told the head that no one had been able to catch him before. Respected schools, Jianghu mercenaries, alliances, no one was able to catch him. In Jianghu, a lot of people called themselves the demon of lust, but none of them can match his skill. And now it's time to try and catch the bastard. He will personally kill the bastard. Gu at this time joyfully ran to his tavern. After all, Mr. Sohun was happy to see him and thanked him. Sohun and Guo went out for a walk in the evening. People all stared at him intently and said hello. And then the girl asked the gentleman, is he leaving already? Sohun was surprised and replied, yes. The girl told him if he could stay a little longer. Sohun replied that he would come back here again. People asked him to be sure to come back. He didn't realize he was being followed. And that lust demon bastard is following him. Sohun returned home in the morning. The girl immediately asked him where he had been. They had lost him. Sohun replied that he was breathing air. Dam was surprised and asked what. Sohun said he hoped he could provoke the lust demon. But it never showed up. The younger one said to Sohun, maybe he can rest then? Sohun replied that it was okay, he would manage. Dam asked Sohun that he was after them. Sohun did not hide it and replied that it was true. And he showed up right after the Demoness died. He's thinking of finishing him off with the help of the Channin faction. So they have nothing to worry about. If the situation takes a turn where he is forced to leave them, they should work cohesively and wait for him in a safe place. He would catch up with them as soon as he had the chance. And then the girls wondered why he would risk so much for them. Come to think of it, then he even went against Sajek to save them. But why would he do that? There was a festival in Channan territory on this day where all the people would gather and present their abilities on display. Sohun heard all this and said that it had already started. Junior said there were so many people gathered. It looks like there's some kind of performance. Sohun asked why here. The younger one said, and maybe go and see what's there. Sohun accepted her offer and he agreed to go. Sohun said he organized the show in 24 hours. Go did a good job. The girls were happy to see all this and shone like stars. When they saw Sohun, all the people started to greet him. The warrior who was speaking showed honor to Sohun and said he salutes too. He was just in time. He had prepared a great show of changing guises. Sohun asked surprised, a change of guise? Very interesting, and he asks him to get him started already. And then the warrior said to Sohun to forgive him for what he was about to do. And then Sohun was very much surprised. And then the warrior shouted at the top of his voice for them to welcome the new head of the Dark Channan faction, Jin Sohun. Sohun asked, who dared to disturb him? The warrior immediately opened his fan and jumped right onto the performance stage. He said he's the head of the dark factions in Chenyang and Channan. And his name is Jin Sohun. Everyone immediately started laughing and having fun. And Sohun saw this and said that they were all persecutors. And the warrior asked Sohun, how dare he lie, and called him a martyr. And he can't be Mr. Jin. His face is an insult to all that is beautiful. Get him out of here immediately. Sohun's image asked, how dare the warrior judge him by his appearance? Let the brute introduce himself. And then the warrior responded to make the mortal look at him. He is one of the three great demons, a raging demon. Sohun's image said he understood. So he had decided to avenge the death of the great demoness? However, wasn't he a little too fat for a raging demon? The warrior lost his temper and replied. To shut him up. He killed his comrade, and now, he will avenge the demoness in the name of the power of friendship between demons. He'll tear him to pieces and eat him alive. But then another man ran up on stage and said that he too was out to avenge his demon friend. After all, the demon of lust is the greatest rapist in the world. The people immediately started booing him and shouting at him to get off into the mist. The warrior told the men to all shut their mouths. Or he'll rape them. And then he'll get to their asses. Dam asked if it was worth provoking the lust demon so openly. The demon asked whose ass should be opened first. But considering he's doing it like a rabbit, he'll take the innocence from both of them. And then he went after them. At that moment, everyone started laughing, and in the moment, Sohun felt that he was being attacked. He immediately deflected the knife with a U-turn. Sohun looked around and realized where the place from where he was attacked was. He immediately went straight there. The gunman was so fast that he moved with great speed. But Sohun did not lag behind and ran after him. The gunner was very angry with him, because he didn't understand how Sohun had dared to make the master look like that. In a moment there was a flash, from which Shooter was very surprised. He turned around and saw Sohun standing there. Sohun asked the gunman what he was wrong about. That's still weak. His master is far worse than that cartoon. The gunman in the moment grabbed his blade and attacked, telling Sohun to shut his stinking mouth. Sohun was at a great distance from this gunman. He dodged his attack, and in a moment he made his own and chopped him to pieces. The shooter was dead before he could say a word. Sohun started to walk, but felt something flying at him. Sohun saw another attacker come in, using the whip to attack. The attacker was surprised that Sohun had repelled his attack so easily. Just how fast is he? He looked at his brother and saw that one blow was enough for him. He definitely couldn't handle him alone. He should team up with the master. The assailant pulled needles from under his clothes and sent them straight at Sohun with the direction of his hand. Sohun didn't bother and reflected them like matchsticks with his blades. At this point, the attacker decided that he needed to escape. But the attacker saw that there were warriors downstairs looking for him and knew he was on top of the building. The attacker realized that he had been nudged and started moving even faster. But Sohun would not let him go so easily and came out of the roof of the house like a monster. Sohun immediately started chasing after him. The attacker saw Sohun's face and realized that he was finished. At the moment of the attack, Sohun saw someone attacking him with their attacks. Sohun had to repel these attacks, while the attacker had already fled to another building. He realized that his master had interfered, and he should run while there is still time. The attacker was already hoping he had escaped. But in a moment the whip tied around his neck and dragged him back. He was very much surprised. The older girl asked him where his master was. The attacker was very angry and could not get free. But in a moment there was a voice saying, "What did they all think they could lure him out in such a pathetic way?" The girls immediately realized it was him. People also began to look around, for they too had heard that voice. The girls realized that the creep was talking using internal energy to hide his presence. The demon told them that if they wanted to play, so be it. From this day forward, he will kill one woman per Chanana. Their wives, their daughters, their mistresses, he'll kill them all. It'll be payment for the show they've been putting on for him. The attacker also started laughing and said that they would regret this decision. And their master was very hungry now. The older woman pulled her whip even tighter and told him to shut up. The attacker immediately began to suffer very badly. The demon at this time felt that he had lost his students. But that was okay, he could always find new ones. More importantly, he is now being pursued by Sohun, the Demoness apprentices, and the entire dark faction of Chanan. It's as delightful as a woman's embrace. He can't wait to see their faces when he escapes their net, from which they think it's impossible to escape. But it wasn't that simple. At that time Sohun followed him and found him. When he entered the room, he saw that the demon was here. The demon was surprised that Sohun had come to him and wondered how he had been able to find this place so quickly. Sohun sat down at the table without a word and taking the pitcher in his hands he began to drink. The demon didn't understand what was happening. Sohun asked the demon, what was he staring at? Didn't expect him to find his hole or something. The demon asked Sohun, is it proper for a disciple of a poisonous demon to live like this? Why didn't he follow the example of his teachers? Sohun asked in surprise, for example? The demon replied that it was exactly that. Who but he would know how frivolous his master's life was? Or was it something he hadn't taught him? The demon asked, what are these Chanan faction mutts here for? And what's his deal with the Demoness apprentices? Or did Sohun decide to play the noble game? Sohun replied that he didn't give a damn about nobility. But here's what he's wondering. Is he too sickly for a pleaser of old men's staffs? And then Demon replied that Sohun was an arrogant creature. Did he really think he could catch him? Just then, someone from the street turned to the Lust Demon and said that he was surrounded by the net of the Chanan dark faction. The demon asked them, so what of it? The warrior replied that they would keep him alive if he took off his pants and surrendered. But they don't guarantee that his butt will be safe. He'll be the first to take care of it. And then Demon couldn't stand it and seeing the look on Sohun's face asked, is he laughing at him now? And at that moment, everything trembled from his strength and the wine glass fell to the ground. From that, his weapon immediately appeared. The demon saw his weapon and immediately withdrew it, and went straight to attack Sohun. Sohun saw all this, and directly reacted and deflected the attack with his fan. The demon didn't hesitate and started attacking. His speed was so great that he was jumping from side to side like a jumper. But Sona caught him in a moment and stopped him. The demon stopped and put his blade away. He felt that he was faster than Sohun, but he was stronger than him. And now he could see why the Demoness had lost. The demon suggested to Sohun that they take a little walk. He immediately vanished and told Sohun to keep up. In flight, the demon saw those warriors mocking him and attacked. Sohun saw this and in a moment went to save them. After repulsing his attack, he ran after him like lightning. The warriors thanked the Lord for saving them from death and wished him to end it once for all. The demon started to run away and in flight asked Sohun what was wrong, couldn't he keep up? The demon asked Sohun, how dare he insult him by being so slow? And now Chanan would choke on blood because of his arrogance. The demon headed towards the humans to kill them all. But the men were ready, and in a moment they knelt down and let their bullets fly. The demon was surprised at this turn and immediately stopped to avoid getting shot. The demon saw that there was a passageway he could go into, turning around there were girls with whips coming at him. The demon stopped as he landed on the ground and realized he couldn't escape. But in a moment, attacks came at him out of nowhere. The demon immediately pulled out his blade and fending off the attacks asked the Channon squad, what did they want? Death. Just then Sohun came and with his fan swooped down on him. The demon saw the attack, but had no time to react. The demon didn't stay down for long and started running again. He saw that they were ordinary people. The demon wondered if this was the Channon's network. Well, that's okay. After all, he who laughs last laughs. He'll kill every last one of them. But for now, he must retreat. Sohun stood on the rooftop and saw where the demon ran to. When he landed in the forest, demon thought he was vaporized. But then he saw a horse with a warrior attacking him. The warrior told the lust demon that he had come for his head. The warrior attacked the demon and told it what kind of jiaochang it was. The demon was very much surprised and didn't understand where the Guan Yu warrior had come from. The demon repelled this attack in a moment. The warrior saw that it didn't work and said that he thought they would give up so easily against him. The warrior did not fight him further and rode off on his horse shouting that he would come back for him. The demon didn't realize what had just happened. But then someone attacked him from the forest with their whips. The demon sensed this attack and reacted in time to stay out of trouble. Looking at the roof, he saw a warrior named Huang Zhong. The demon asked, "Are they mocking him?" Huang immediately released his arrows at the demon. At that moment, the demon got angry and said that he was fed up with them all and began to repel the attacks. Huang, seeing that his arrows were broken into small pieces, was a little surprised, but he was not discouraged. But in the moment, Sohun himself arrived on the battlefield. Huang told him that he thanked him for the opportunity to get even with this molester of granddaughters. Sohun was surprised. After all, he knew that Huang didn't have any granddaughter. How could one know his character so poorly? The demon asked Sohun what he had set up here. Tell him to tell those fools to get out of here. They'll settle this like men. Sohun replied that he was amused to hear him say that. Just a few seconds ago he was trying to escape, like the cowardly rat that he is. The demon immediately insulted Sohun, thinking that if Sohun thinks he's a disciple of a poison demon, and then Huang released the next arrow, but it was very rare. Sohun was standing still at this time and the wipe passed next to him. Once it passed Sohun, it turned into a more dangerous weapon, and the demon saw this and immediately repelled the attack. But after the arrow came the mist which was heading towards him, and the demon was very surprised from the poison. The demon began to use wind abilities so that the poison wouldn't envelop him completely, and he was caught so horribly. The demon couldn't reflect everything and realized that it was a soul-dissolving poison. And paralyzing. The demon immediately went running away, seeing that he was doing very badly. But Sohun didn't let him go and chased after him. At this moment, the warriors were saying that the demon of lust is over there. Let the warriors follow the fireworks. The only choice left for the demon was to run away and heal himself so that he could attack them again and pay them back. But Sohun wouldn't let him go so easily. At that time, Gu and his men were hiding in the bushes near Chong Lake. He told the warriors that the demon was coming and to be on the alert. Gu realized and thought that as soon as he appeared, they would throw their spears at him. Then they would shout the name of the woman they loved and that they wanted to avenge her. In fact, it's as easy as a finger on the pavement. He's going to show everyone what Gu Sa can do in this battle. Gu saw the salute and realized that here comes the demon walking, and Sohun-san was chasing after him. He immediately shouted that now. Everyone immediately threw out their spears, but the demon sensed them and changed his direction to avoid being hit by the spears. Gu ordered his men to shout out the names of their chosen women. Quickly. They immediately threw their spears and started shouting the names. Gu said that it was very good and let them keep it up. And Gu also released his spear and said that the lust demon was a stinking dog. And then someone told Gu that he was so carried away that he had forgotten that he didn't have a chosen one. Gu immediately released his spear and shouted that it was for the grandmother who lived across the street. Gu said she was 80 years old, a decade ago. He's a stupid animal. She took care of him all the time. The demon in a moment stopped at the tree and directed his gaze at Gu. Gu was surprised and asked him what he was staring at. The demon was ready to eat him whole for such insults against him. He asked Gu, "Grandma?" The demon turned to Gu and said that he would turn him inside out. Gu thought to himself as he looked at him, "What's he doing?" The demon changed its trajectory and immediately attacked Gu. When the warrior saw it, he realized that he had to run away. The demon saw that the guy was far away and threw his sword at him. Gu saw the attack and started running even faster, and at the last moment Sohun came and repelled the attack. Sohun stopped in front of the demon and could see that it had pissed him off. And it seemed that time had not spared his mind. At this time, Gu was startled from his death and dodged the attack, and he fell to the ground and passed out. Sohun and demon began their battle, because running after each other for so long was getting tiresome and it was time to settle things one-on-one. They were ready to kill each other and fight to their last breath. The battle was happening so fast that no one had time to watch. Sohun and demon stopped on the roof of the house and looked at each other. At that time, the guys were all watching the battle from the other side. The demon turned to the warriors and asked them, "Why are they quiet? Or are they full of shit in their mouth?" Sohun said the network started working as soon as he started running. But once he stopped, if he had fought him right away, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. The demon turned into a monster and said, "Gut him like a boar. And it's gonna happen in front of this dumbass crowd." And arm his tortured body on top of a mountain of corpses. The demon immediately walked right next to Sohun that he couldn't even see it as it wounded his arm. The demon was even happier and attacked even harder. Sohun didn't like it, so he fought too. Sohun fought him like a true warrior and at full strength. As Sohun fell to the ground, he said that a demoness had died here. The demon asked, "So what of it?" Sohun replied that she had laughed just as he was laughing now. But she died with a face full of terror. The demon began to smile even wider and said that Sohun had done a great job. To think that a demon's apprentice had killed one of the 4 demons. We can give him a round of applause. The demon asked Sohun that his master was also planning to kill him. Indignation, poison, lust, sorcery. That's what they called themselves. He knows about it, doesn't he? Sohun replied that he knew. The demon said that fierce demon and immediately went to attack Sohun. Sohun had time to react and used his blade to repel the demon's attack. But he kept trying to suppress it. Sohun looked into his eyes and said it was poison. The demon heard this and immediately moved away from the distance. The demon immediately thought that Sohun had used poison, or was only trying to use it against him. Sohun immediately combined his blades into a single weapon to make it even easier for him to kill this lust demon. Sohun raised his weapon above his head and said, "Full moon." Looking into the demon's eyes, the demon was fixated on Sohun at this point and thought that he had just connected the blades. But it's not that simple with Sohun. Sohun was even faster this time. He immediately flew into the air and attacked the demon with his blade with a merciless strike. When the demon saw this, he realized that he would have to repel this attack. He went straight for his blade. But Sohun's strength and attack was even stronger, and passing through the demon's defense it hit right on target. From such an attack, a strong wind rose up that the girls couldn't even see what happened there. After all, the demon was also in smoke. At that moment the image of Sohun with his blade became visible. He was coming out of there like a true head of the lands. Damn, thought at this moment, how did he have so much strength? The lust demon couldn't even fight back. And then the warriors began to look at him negatively, for he had fooled them all in this battle. His power is like a divine power. They are all afraid and cannot imagine what will happen to them in this battle. Sohun said he needed to be believable. Saying it's poison when it's not. Giving poison while saying it's medicine. Pretending to be poisoned when he's unharmed. And when the enemy believes he's better than him, stronger. Then the psychological battle will be over. Hiding your abilities from everyone and if possible not using your special skill is the most important thing in a psychological battle. They say that this is the best method, giving immense pleasure. Because only then does the enemy experience boundless despair and emptiness. Sohun asked the demon of lust, "Where is the violent one?" Immediately the demon couldn't answer and Sohun thought he was dead. In a moment, everything began to glow with a bright light, which Sohun was surprised by. And then Sohun realized that thanks to him, he had learned many things. Things he wasn't supposed to know. Sohun looked at the onlookers and realized that they were all witnesses to his special skill. So be it. They were serving him, after all. Sohun told the guys that they did a good job. At this time the guys asked Gu what he was saying, that the lust demon got angry from his words. Gu replied that it was exactly like that. Although he was killed by a master, the person who made him make the mistake was himself. Gu is from the Channin faction of the Dark Path. The guys didn't believe it and asked, why would a demon react to the words of someone like him? Most likely the Lord had pissed him off. Plus, he was originally enraged. And they all had something to do with it. Gu just didn't see that performance. It was a breakup of everything. Gu shouted at them that they were all bullshit. Can they bet a Fofan? The guy asked him what he was up to. Gu said that if the rumors were to be believed, the lust demon only preyed on young beautiful women. And everyone shouted out the names of their lovers. Demon didn't care about that. But just mentioning a grandmother who was 80 years old a decade ago, the guys thought about it and said that was fair enough. Immediately everyone started laughing. Gu couldn't stand it and said that they were annoying him. And then someone from the street told Gu to go outside, for there was a message for him. So Gu went outside and said, "What's wrong?" Just then he replied that the master had decided to reward him. Gu was greatly surprised at this point and asked what. Said, "Here is what the gentleman said. The Channin faction network strategy started with Gu Sa's report. And everything succeeded because of his observation." He realized that the information he had heard was extremely important. He kept his cool even though he was speaking in front of him and faction leader Go Sejok. And he gives him 5,000 Niang as a thank you. And then all the guys and Gu himself was very surprised. Turned to Gu and said that he had done a good job. And he hoped they would see each other again. Regards to the leader of the half-month-old dancing sword school, Jin Sohun. Gu let a tear fall and thanked the master. And then told Gu that he congratulated him too, and here was his reward. Gu couldn't believe it and took the box like a child. Asked Gu, "And when is he going to show up?" Gu wiped his tears and replied that they could go inside. And here they were saying it's a good idea not to have a drink on such an occasion. And this person knows the school leader personally, so you can trust him. Sohun went to the Western Dark Road with the girls that same day. When they arrived in the town, Dam said that everything had changed so much here. Sohun replied that he understood and asked her if she remembered the way. Dam smiled and replied, "Of course." "Is he still here?" Sohun answered yes, somewhere around here. He is either in the kitchen on the second floor or sleeping somewhere. And he has gotten a little fat. The eldest said that compared to Channin, this place is like a village. It's so peaceful. Junior also said that she could feel that atmosphere. Is this really Chenyang Dark Faction territory? It looks like an ordinary village. Sohun replied that it was much more crowded during the day. And that many people had left after he had killed a couple or three of the thugs and destroyed the Blood Whirlwind clan. Dam said that this used to be the location of the Crescent Moon Dancing Sword School. Sohun replied that this was correct. Taking control of the place, he tried to recreate what had happened before. But then Sahek ran out shouting for the master. Sahek immediately shouted to his men that the master had returned. The eldest saw the lights of the houses and said that there were a lot of people living here. The younger one told Sohun that he had said there were only a few people here. Sohun was surprised and thought, are they multiplying? How come there were so many people gathered there? A family with children, and Sahek ran out. Sohun looked at them and thought that he had not seen them before. Where did these children come from? Then a girl came out of the house and said that she apologized and called Sohun Zasona. Sohun immediately saw the same girl who had taught him martial arts. Sohun froze for a second and asked, "Unhai?" The girl immediately ran up to him and hugged him so tightly that Sohun felt the very embrace. Started crying and told Zasona that he was alive. Sohun could not accept this and replied that he was alive and well. Dam also cried when she saw her and asked with surprise, "Unhai?" The girl walked up to her and asked, she must be Dam Wool. Dam cried hard and said it was her. Un immediately hugged her tightly, for she felt the same warmth she had felt years ago. Tearfully said they were both alive. But what happened to them? Where have they been all this time? Sohun bowed and introduced himself to everyone else. And then the boy bowed back and said that he had heard a lot about him. The guy says his name is Chan, used to be called an ugly demon. And he asks them not to be scared of him. Sohun immediately remembered the ugly demon and remembered that he was the only one who had helped the school of the dancing sword back then. He wondered where Jong had gone, so he was with Un. Then the boy asked Jong who the uncle was. Sohun asked Jong, is he Un Hai's husband? In that case, he would be respectful to them. Chu was immediately surprised, and realized that he had never seen him like that. The older one was surprised too, because she saw that Sohun was also ordinary sometimes. Chu said they'd better not stand on the doorstep and go inside. It's already getting cold. Chu shouted to everyone and told them to go inside and talk there. Just then, Dogon came over and said he had been so worried about him since he left. Sohun turned around and replied that everything was fine. Then Dogon gave him a pipe and asked if he would smoke. Sohun asked where a common cook like him got a nipen from. Dogon replied that he stole it for him. Sohun immediately smoked this pipe. Dogon asked him if he had seen Un yet. The whole school was abuzz when she showed up. Dogon and Sohun sat down on a bench and started smoking. Dogon said that of all the comrades, she was the only one who had come back. The world is such a shitty place, to be honest. Maybe it's lucky that at least she's back, though. Sohun didn't answer anything and just smoked. Dogon saw that he was speechless and told him to finish his cigarette and go inside. In the meantime, he would prepare some appetizers for the drink. Sohun heard the gate close saying that he had come home and brought him back to them. He became stronger and then he was able to protect them. And he asks the boys to come back soon. Chu asked at dinner time that they killed the Demoness and the Lust Demon. Sohun answered yes, and also spared Go Sejok. Chu now realized that was why he had been away for so long. He had been busy killing 2 demons. Chu asked Sohun what was his reason for favoring Gu. Is it really what he thought it was? Sohun replied that he had swept the Channon faction under his feet. And then Chu thought, why is he talking about this so casually? Sohun said that he plans to establish a Shangxi faction in either Shenanya or Chenyang soon. Have him alert the faction leaders about this. Chu couldn't believe that Sohun had killed 2 of the 4 demons. And seized power in the Channon Dark faction. It felt like it was easy for him. Then someone outside the door asked Zasonia if he was busy. Sohun replied that he was not and gave permission for them to come in. Chu bowed and told the gentleman that he would come by later. It was Un. She decided to talk to him. Sohun told Un that he kept wondering when she would show up. Un asked Sohun, was he waiting for her? Sohun replied that of course. Un asked Sohun that he was already prepared for her nagging. Sohun replied that he was always ready. After drinking a few shots of wine, Un told Zasona that she was worried about him. He knows how dangerous the dark factions are. That's not like him, he was such a kind boy when he was a kid. And at that moment, Sohun remembered her telling them to watch their posture during practice. Un told them to visualize their arms stretching forward. And they should try not to tense their wrist too much. Un immediately asked Zasonia, is he listening to her? But then Sohun just smiled. Un asked him, why is he smiling? Did she say something funny? Sohun replied that he was not and said that he was no longer a boy and had been unkind for a long time. Un asked in what sense unkind. He quarreled with Sherwool at times, but he was never an evil person. Sohun said that his master was one of the 4 demons, a poisonous demon. And the day he disappeared, everyone was drugged. It was his master's work. He spotted him then and kidnapped him. Un said that if his master is evil, doesn't make him the same. He doesn't have to become like him. Sohun immediately grabbed the glass and said that he had to. Un asked him, does he want to become a villain? Is he out of his mind? Sohun said that Jianghu wouldn't be able to survive otherwise. He had already killed the leaders of the Blood Whirlwind clan and the Five Poison clan. Then he came to Channon to bring back Dam Wool. In doing so, he got rid of the Great Demoness and the Demon of Lust. And that wasn't the end of it. On his way back, he cleared 2 castles belonging to the Green Forest. He went in there to visit the viceroys of the castles, who decided to attack the Demoness apprentices. And there he saw people locked in cages, held like cattle. There were many children among them, and he freed them by killing all the scum in the fortress. Ut-un said he did the right thing. He punished the wrongdoers and saved the defenseless, didn't he? So-hun said that one of the green men told him before he died that a troop of wildlings would come for his head. Strife and resentment are his eternal companions. And after news of the slain demon spreads, a raging demon follows on his heels. If he's going to hold back and live like nothing happened, how is he going to deal with all these people? And then Un trembled and replied that she just wanted him to be happy. She was worried about him and didn't want him to get hurt. Just then So-hun took her hand and gave her a warm handshake. Un apologized and said that she should not have given him moralizing words. So-hun said he missed it. That's why he is smiling. Un smiled and said that he is smiling after all. Un immediately asked him, "Aren't you ashamed to make fun of your elders? Let him better pour her some wine." So-hun smiled and replied that he would be right there. Un said that So-hun was kidnapped by the master after all, so how did he escape? So-hun replied that he didn't escape. He just let him go. Un immediately asked why. What good would it do him? So-hun replied that it was simple. He defeated him. Un was surprised and asked that he had fought his master. So-hun replied that he had not. He liked him so much that he could not refuse him. The poison demon has a twin brother, an immortal witch doctor. After his brother's master's experiments, he removes the poison from his body and cures him. While one was obsessed with poisons, the other dreamed of saving everyone around him. They are both insane in their extremes. However, the witch doctor did not cure him at every opportunity. He only saved him when he was on the brink of death. They used it to test all their ideas, helping each other save materials. And then he realized, if he wanted to survive, he needed them to love him, no matter what it took. Afterward, he started supporting them as convincingly as he could. He tried to be nice to them, trying to understand them, and did all sorts of other things. After a long time, his master finally gave in to these tricks. He asked the master at that time what was wrong. The master answered him that he had made a really powerful poison, and he is hardly experiencing his action. And then he smiled and said, "What is it that he bears? Let him forget what he was told." That's how he survived. Then the 2 brothers began to work together to make his body as stable as possible. And then So-hun told Un that she should not stay here. He would prepare a safe place for her where she could take shelter with her family. And then Un replied that no. She would stay here until every member of the Dancing Sword returned home. So-hun tells Un that's why he's asking her to leave. She has children, after all. Imagine what would happen if one of them got hurt. And imagine what would happen to them if she or her husband were hurt. So-hun told her not to worry, he would visit her from time to time. Besides, he needed a place to nurse his wounds, too. Un asked in surprise, "Wounds?" So-hun replied that was exactly what it was. He didn't just talk about his masters for no reason. If the pure ones attacked them, he would have to side with them. Un asked why. They had tortured him for years, hadn't they? So-hun answered yes, but his master. Un said, what if his master decides to kidnap a child for experimentation again, what will he do then? And then So-hun replied that in that case he would oppose them. But that's not going to happen. They are no longer engaged in experiments of this kind. Un was surprised and asked why. So-hun replied because all the experiments they wanted to do had already been done on him. In the morning, Chu knocked on the master's door and said that representatives of the Jeagle clan had arrived. So-hun replied to let them in. The representatives entered and said they had heard a lot about So-hun, the leader of the Crescent Moon Sword Dancing School. The guy said his name was Hen. And the other brother's name is Tan. So-hun said they had come a long way, he welcomes them. Sohun allowed them to sit down and said that it had been reported to him that they wanted to discuss something. Hen replied that that was correct. They are from the Zhuge messenger in Zhongxi. Sohun said he was listening to them. And then the boys saw him as an impudent man who did not offer a cup even of tea. Hen said that as a master, he knows that they own the Zhuge messenger. By the way, it is one of the most important organizations in the clan. North of the Yangtze River, the Mtua clan, the Tang clan and others use their services. And other pure factions also subscribe to the messenger. And he heard about what happened in Chang'an. He's the one who killed the Demoness and the Lust Demon, right? Sohun immediately replied that that was correct. Hen said that it was marvelous. They and the messenger were extremely surprised when they heard about it. There was hype everywhere over the appearance of a new great warrior in Shanxi. Sohun asked, "A great warrior?" Hen replied that's exactly what it is. If Sohun understands, that's what they call the Jianghu ranking. They gather news from all over Jianghu to highlight the top 100 masters. And he also hopes that he will share some exclusive information with them regarding the battle with demons. They will be extremely interested in how he defeated these devils of hell. And what he intends to do now. By the way, they have already discussed these events in their newspaper and will prepare a couple of articles. Here, let Sohun admire it. Jin Sohun, a great warrior who had appeared in Chanyang. How was he able to destroy the Blood Whirlwind clan and the two great demons? And they're also planning to add the story of how he took over the Chanyen Dark faction. And the story of how he used the Chanyen network to catch the Lust Demon. And there is so much to write about him. Sohun said that they are both quite knowledgeable. Hen said, but here's what he really cares about. Is Jin Sohun the incarnation of another demon? For as they know, no place is empty. Hen said that he would tell them at once that they belong to neither the pure nor the dark factions. They are just collecting stories from the streets of Jianghu for everyone to hear about later. Sohun asked him, is it true? Hen replied that definitely. Sohun said he'd love to meet them again when he gets bored. So let them drop by from time to time. And then the boys realized that he was treating them like some shabby peddlers. Sohun asked, anything else? Hen took his fan and told Sohun that he probably didn't fully understand the situation. The messenger has a huge influence in Jianghu. Sohun asked them, is it true? Hen replied that it was true. And his position depends on how they introduce him. Let him say, is Sohun of the dark? Sohun replied that he couldn't understand. First they flatter him, then they threaten him. If it suits them, they can write that he is of the dark ones. Hen asked him, did he think they were joking? Sohun immediately suggested that they should get to the point already. Enough of this pretense.